Okay, so guys, it seems to be starting. Let me just check that it's all done. Okay, the transcript thing is showing. Okay, so it is recording, just to let you guys all know that it is recording. Okay, so guys, let me repeat that again. So if somebody wants to watch the video, if they're not able to attend the class. Okay, so choose a brand, any brand that you like. We're not giving you a brand that you have to choose. It's entirely up to you. And like I said, you can choose a computer, you can choose a phone, you can choose a person, you can choose a concept, you can choose anything that you like. Okay, so like I said, so far I'm doing Coke as sort of like a template for you guys. Okay, so you can't choose Coke. And one student so far has chosen Barbie, okay, which is a really, really smart choice to make because it's got lots and lots and lots of material. They've just released the Barbie movie. Okay, but you can even do something if you wanted to do a movie. So I know these days we have Barbenheimer. Everybody's comparing Oppenheimer to Barbie. I don't know why, because they're very different. Okay, but they've got this whole Barbenheimer thing going on, on YouTube and, all over the place and sort of, memes and that kind of thing. You could even do maybe Oppenheimer as a product, as a brand. Okay, and then what you have to do is you have to create an integrated media management campaign around the 5 elements of the marketing communications mix. And again, those 5 elements are advertising, PR and publicity is number 2, personal sales is number 3, sales promotions is number 4, and direct marketing, which includes all your social media and any direct communication with somebody, that's number 5. Okay, so I'm going to go through that with you.
So Robert, I think that the question is then the strategy, what does it look like? And like, yeah, like, and what does it look like? And what role does, I think, the academic sources that the students have to use play within the strategy? That's my sense of what the students want to know. Like, ultimately, this final end product, what does it sort of look like or sound like? This presentation they have to do, and whether the academic sources sort of feed into that, if I'm understanding things correctly.
Of course, absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And guys, you're welcome to ask any questions. You can send me at WhatsApp. I'm better at WhatsApps than emails, but I do answer emails. But please send it to my Gmail account, which I think most of you have. I'll put it on the group again so that you guys have it. But sure, no problem. Okay, so guys, that's what it needs to. It boils down to those 5 elements. You can start with an introduction if you want, or you can introduce the brand to me. So let me use Coke as an example. So Coke's been around since 1886. Coke is probably the number one. I would need to check the facts though, which I'm still busy putting together. Coke is probably the number 1 selling soft drink in the world. Okay, Coca-Cola has its head office in Atlanta, and it is, a very prominent American brand. Atlanta's history is very integrated into Coke. So if you wanted to give a bit of a history, it started out, it was invented by a guy called Dr. Pemberton, who started it. And initially it was sort of like an elixir, like a medicine to make you feel better, to help you with sort of like a stomach ailment. And then they sugared it up some more and they put the fizz into it, and it's the whole thing. But you could choose anything. Let me give you an example. McDonald's is a very powerful and successful and strong brand. KFC is a very powerful and successful, strong brand. Nando's, those are all food brands as an example. But you can choose JIC if you want to. You can choose OMO, washing powder. Those are FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. You can choose anything you want to. Okay, so you can give me a bit of an introduction, which is fine. It sets the scene. And then you're going to move and you're going to say to me, okay, now if it is a successful brand that you are doing an analysis of, then give me what they have done well that has made them successful and that has made them very, very, very effective. Okay. If it is a brand that is not well known or that has been struggling along, then give me what your proposed strategy is for the brand. So I'm going to go through that with you guys now as well. Okay, that's what you're going to do. If it's a very successful brand, then at the end, if you want to, or when you do your breakdowns, you can say this is what they could do extra. This is what they could do in addition to what they've already been doing to make it, you know, more robust. Okay, so let's go back then to the first element, advertising. Okay, what kind of advertising does Coca-Cola do? So they usually do advertising. They do advertising on billboards. They do advertising on TV. They do advertising on YouTube, not that much. And then you need to tell me, because this is where your insight comes in as a fourth-year student, you need to tell me if you believe, like, for example, let's say you're driving along some country road, okay, and it's far away from all the big cities, and you stop in some little town somewhere, okay, and you pull up, and there's a sign up that says Omar's Cafe or Gogo's Cafe, and it's her writing is in white, it's on a red background, and there's a Coca-Cola logo next to it. Okay, so Coke used to, I don't know if they still do it, they probably do. Okay, Coke used to do those signs for people for free. Okay, so you would contact Coca-Cola and say, listen, I'm opening Gogo's Cafe. Can you please do me a sign that says Go? And they say sure, and then they would make it for you, and then they would you would either have to go collect it, or they would deliver it, okay. And then what you would do is you put up the sign outside that says Gogo's Cafe. Now you need to explain to me and tell me, do you think that is a form of advertising, or do you think that's one of the other elements of the marketing communications mix in terms of media? Okay, so you can see I would say it's a form of advertising, but the medium is different. It's a billboard or a sign on the front of a cafe. Okay, so it's a form of advertising. The medium is a billboard or a sign. Okay, so now go and compare that to Coca-Cola. Let's say you turned on SABC3, if you still watch it, okay, whatever it is. Okay, and you see an advert that says, Coca-Cola, your happy place, or makes you happy, or have a Coke and a smile, or one of the lots and lots and lots of advertising slogans that they've used in the past. You say, okay, so now what kind of advertising is that? That is a TV advert. Okay, so now what you need to ask yourself is, how is the TV advert and Gogo's Cafe sign, how are they integrated? How are they using them together as an integrated media management strategy? Well, the most obvious thing that you can say is, okay, they use the same logo, they use the same red, they use the same typeface, they use the same font, they have the same, look at the Coca-Cola bottle, that's how detailed they are. The Coca-Cola bottle even is shaped based on the cola nuts that it was originally where the Coca-Cola originally came from. This is all deep, huge, very psychological branding, very psychological connections. I mean, the Coca-Cola bottle, okay, that they use is even trademarked. Other companies are not allowed to use the same bottles. If you go and have a look at a Coca-Cola shelf, okay, in a store, the Pepsi bottle is shaped differently. Other bottles are shaped differently. I think Fanta might be similar because Fanta is a byproduct, is a sub product of Coke, so it's owned by the same company, so they may use the same bottles. I don't know. But if you have a look, it's very, very, very specific. Then, for example, Coca-Cola always has that ribbon on it, that ribbon logo at the bottom. It's like a sort of bit of a ribbon. You will see that on Gogo's sign, and they will also use that in the advert on TV. Okay, so you can see how those two are integrated. And what they then might do, okay, let's move on. Okay, and then I'll come back to this over here. How does Coca-Cola do PR and publicity? What sort of public relations campaigns do they do? And now let me give you an example. Okay, there was a program on TV. I never watched it. I watched a couple of episodes. It didn't really work for me as a program. There was a program on TV called Mad Men. It was about advertising in the 1960s and obviously the New York advertising firms. And at the end of the series, as the series ended, what they did is that they worked into the program, okay, that Mad Men had come up with a specific Coca-Cola campaign, and that they had then used, and they worked it into the program. Now, that's not actually true. It was them using creative license. So there was a company that came up with an idea. It was McCann Erickson, actually, if you guys know them. So McCann Erickson came up with a Coca-Cola advertising campaign. Okay, and they launched this advertising campaign. But in this TV show, the guys from the Mad Men advertising company used creative license to work into this fictional story that they actually came up with a specific Coke campaign. Okay, now when people wrote articles, online articles, and newspaper articles, and blog posts, and so on and so forth about the end of the series, because it was quite a popular series, they said Mad Men ends and uses Coca-Cola as a as a way to end their show. And then the person who is writing the article would say, Mad Men had done this show, and it was wonderful to see. It was lovely. By the way, they took credit for this advertising campaign. That's not really true, but they worked it into the show for dramatic license. So you can now see when this article appears in the newspaper, or when this thing appears in a blog, whatever it is, that is publicity for Coca-Cola. Why? Because what's the difference between advertising and publicity? Advertising is paid for space. Publicity is usually free.
So Rob,
yes.
I'm just thinking. So if this was a presentation on Coke, right? We've so far got a bit of a introduction to the brand.
Yes.
We've got examples of what they do already for advertising, and we've got examples of what they do already for what you're talking about now in terms of publicity. Yes. So we're running through this presentation where what we've got so far is those 5 elements of the mix is students saying, this is my brand, we're going to introduce it first, here's how they advertise, here's how they do publicity, here's how. So it's sort of a breakdown of what the kinds of things that they do, like you're saying, for Coke and publicity. So in their presentation, a presentation about Coke, it might say, here's a thing that they do and have done, right? And just a report back on that. And then later on, you get into maybe like what would be good ideas for them to do going forward, and that's the strategy part.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, Chris. So guys, let me ask you the question again. Remember, why are we studying integrated media management? Why are we doing that? And let me tell you why. It's something that we are going to go through when we when we approach your S1. Okay. The reason why we are studying integrated media management is because in this day and age, we cannot get people to pay attention to only one medium. Remember what I said to you guys as well, and there was a really good video that I saw once, but I can't find it, okay? Remember, think back to the 1950s. So now imagine the 1950s. Let me give you this thing again, which is useful. Okay, so you have America, and let's use America as an example, in the 1950s. There's the man wearing his hat. He's got 2 children, a dog, a picket fence around his house, and he's got a job, and his wife is at home. She's wearing her string of pearls, and she's got her A-line dress, and she's got her hair done like Doris Day, and she's living in the 1950s, okay? So this gentleman gets in his car in the morning, and he turns on the one radio station in the city he lives. He drives on the one highway into work that's got 1 billboard on it. Okay, well, let's say 3 billboards. Okay, and he goes and does his job. Then during lunch, he takes a break and he reads the one newspaper in the town. On the way back from work afterwards, he turns on the one radio station to listen to the radio, and then he comes home and he listens to the one TV station that they've got. Okay, and that's how he is exposed to media. So in the 1950s, and this is oversimplified, but in the 1950s, if you were, say, Coke, or if you were whatever, choose a brand, if you were Apple, let's say Apple was a thing in the 1950s, okay, and you wanted to advertise the new iPhone, which of course they didn't have in the 1950s, okay, you'd have to put an advert, 1 advert on the radio, 1 advert on a billboard, 1 advert on TV, 1 advert in the newspaper, and 1 advert in the magazine, so the lady could read the magazine as well, and she, or the mother, okay, and she would then also be exposed to it. And in so doing, you would capture 90% of the market. It was a very simple time because media was new, okay? Fast forward now, 75 years to, or 73 years, or 68 years, whatever it is, to 2023. We now have if you travel down any highway in Joburg, there are 50 billboards. Okay, you have got Metro FM, YFM, 94.7, whatever, a zillion radio stations. You've got, you've got terrestrial radio stations, you've got internet radio stations, you've got small little community radio stations. So there are a zillion different media. Okay. You go into TV, you now have SABC 1, 2, 3, you've got ETV, if you even watch TV. Okay, maybe I don't want, and I know you guys have been doing research about, the use of media in, of different age groups and so on and so forth. So if you even watch TV, otherwise you might watch YouTube, or you watch Netflix, or you watch whatever it is, all of these things over here. So there are now a million different ways to watch TV. Okay, a million different ways to listen to the radio. Newspapers, you can still get the hard copy ones, but most people don't, read newspapers. They will look for information on the internet, and they'll go to different, and the internet is billions of pages of information. Okay, so that is that over there. Billboards is, so what we have in 2023 is this huge amount of clutter and this huge amount of information overload. Everybody's overloaded, being bombarded by messages from so many different sources at so many different times, and they can't take it in. So what's happening is companies are sitting down and saying, listen, we're not getting our message through to the market. How do we break through all this clutter, and how are we going to get our message through to all the people out there? And one of the things I've said is the only way we can really do this is if we integrate media across the different channels, okay, and make sure that when we speak to people, the message is consistent, persistent, and therefore, because it's consistent and clear, it is compelling. So let's take a step back, okay, and let's say you are Coke and you're using a slogan that Coke used to say, and they used to say, have a Coke and a smile. And it even turned it into a little jingle, or like McDonald's, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it. Okay, so you now turn on the radio and you hear Justin Timberlake saying, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it. Then you drive past the McDonald's billboard and you see it says, I'm loving it with a McDonald's M. Then you are watching a TV show and you are watching, I don't know, whatever, some TV show, and you see they've got a McDonald's, they're all gone off to eat McDonald's, and somebody turns it into a joke and says, haha, I'm loving it, because they're sort of picking up on the whole thing. Then you have a whole bunch of students who are together in McDonald's, and they're taking a selfie, and they're posting it on Facebook or on Instagram or on Threads or whatever it is, and they're saying, I'm loving it as a joke. So you can see now what's happening is McDonald's are starting to break their message through, or Coke is starting to break their message through, because they're able to target a whole bunch of media at the same time. But they have to be integrated, and that's what we're trying to teach you in this course, because if you don't integrate your media, then people are not going to listen to the message. I mean, even now, you guys may be aware, they've now started saying, okay, because Twitter's not, I mean, people are now saying Elon Musk changing Twitter from Twitter to X and getting rid of the little birdie and the tweet is a huge branding disaster. He's taken a very successful brand like Twitter, and he's ruining it by turning it into X because of his pet project, whatever it is. So as somebody who has studied, marketing and media like you guys, I have to agree with that. He's taking a brand that had lots of equity, what we call equity, okay, and he's now ruining it because he's now trying to introduce something new. And it'll probably work because he's Elon Musk and he can throw lots of money at it, but it's not a great strategy when it comes to why break something that isn't broken? Why try and fix something that isn't broken? So the whole idea with what you guys are trying to do is you need to show me that you understand, and of course you guys do, but you need to do it in an academic way. You need to show me that you understand how media is integrated across different channels. Okay, so let's use the Coke example again. So now Mad Men has done this end of series and they have some publicity around it. And so Coke will pick up on that and say, when they do their reporting, they'll say, look, at the amount of publicity that we received around this. Another example, and this now brings in sales promotion. So, and I'm going to discuss this with you guys. A couple of years ago, Coke, and I mentioned this to you guys last week when we were speaking in class, a couple of years ago, Coca-Cola took a whole bunch of really big, oversized vending machines to colleges in Argentina. It was an Argentinian campaign. Really, really big. You couldn't fit the money into the slot, okay, at the top of the machine because it was too high. So people saw these things, and, you know, they were all sort of young students like you guys. They were like, this is interesting. And they're like, okay, so how do you get the money into the slot? Okay, and then they realized the only way that you could get onto the thingy and to get the money into the slot was to stand on somebody else's shoulders, or to something to boost you up, and then you'd throw the money in and it would dish out 2 Cokes. And the reason why is because they wanted to create like a Coke share with a buddy campaign, that kind of thing. The students loved it. They went absolutely crazy. They took selfies. They told their friends. They put it on YouTube. They put it on Facebook. They put it on Instagram. So what happened? This is an example of a sales promotion, because we are doing something. A vending machine can fit into a college, you know, like what you guys have got there, but it wouldn't be an oversized vending machine. So it was part of a promotion that they did to try and drum up support. Why? Because we're wanting to create what we call brand salience, or top of mind awareness. If somebody says to you soft drink, the first thing Coke wants you to think of is Coke. And you might say, Rob, it's very manipulative. Well, you can argue that it is, but that's what we're exposed to. Okay, so now let's have a look at all the elements. The vending machine itself is an example of advertising, because it's got Coke all over the sides. Okay, so that's your advertising. The vending machine then also is an example of a sales promotion. Why? Because they're doing this promotion, this 2-for-1 deal. You put 2 coins in, or you put 2 coins in and it dishes out 2 Cokes. So there's your promotion. It's also an example of personal sales, because you're trying to boost the sales. You're trying to get people to buy more Coke. So that's what you're going to do. So you've covered there in this one promotion, you've covered advertising, you've covered sales, you've covered a promotion. You've also covered direct marketing, because people are taking selfies, they're taking pictures, they are posting it on Instagram, etc., etc., etc. And so that is covering your direct marketing. And Coke garnered so much publicity, marketing blogs and reporters and the Wall Street Journal and USA Today, whatever, all wrote articles about this clever campaign that Coke did. So what does that give you? Huge amounts of publicity, which is free, but you're being exposed to the Coke brand. There's Coke, there's Coke, there's Coke, there's Coke, there's Coke. So you can see Coke, just by doing this one thing over here. Now, the promotion where they had this oversized vending machine where you have to stand on somebody's shoulders to throw the money and dish out 2 Cokes, is technically speaking a promotion. Okay, that's what it is. So it's a sales promotion, but you can see it touches all the other brand touch points. It touches every other part of the integrated media management mix. It's partly advertising, it's partly promotion, it's partly sales, it's partly publicity and PR, and it's partly direct marketing. So that is what we're trying to do these days. So when you go out into industry and you are presenting your stuff to a client, and a client says to you, I know nothing about marketing, take me from the beginning. And you say to them, right, let's start with, do you have a logo? What is your brand speaking about? What are you doing? What are you trying to sell? Because remember, guys, take it back to basics. What is marketing at the end of the day? And all the stuff that we do, okay, falls under marketing. So the radio that you guys do, the journalism that you guys do, if you did journalism, okay, the sound engineering that you guys do, if you did that, whatever it is, the videos that you do, the media that you do, even the research that you do, all of it falls under marketing. What is marketing? Marketing is creating a product or service or idea that people either want or need. Now, what's the difference between want and need? I need to eat food because we all have a physiological need to eat food, but I want to eat a pizza today. That's the difference. So telling people, creating a product, service, or idea that people want or need, and then simply telling them that you have it. How do you tell them that you have it? You tell them using advertising, PR and publicity, personal sales, sales promotions, and direct marketing. How do you do that effectively? You need to integrate all of those things together. Why? Because people don't pay attention to messages anymore because they're overwhelmed by all the information that they're exposed to. I mean, I did a survey recently as well, and the question was asked, do you watch TV as a Gen X? And I said, no. Thank you so much, close, end of survey. Okay, so it's like, okay, there we go. I don't. I haven't watched TV. I watch Netflix, or whatever it is. So what you'll find then is another example of something, and now you can argue about these things. Product placement. Okay, so when you see, you know, Vin Diesel, you know, just racing through the streets of Los Angeles, you know, and he stops and he wipes the sweat off his brow and he picks up a Coke and drinks the Coke and you can see the Coke. That's what we call product placement. Coke probably paid millions of dollars to get the can of Coke in the movie. Okay, and the thing is, that is called product placement. Very rarely do we find products being placed in movies that the advertisers don't pay for. Okay, in the case of Mad Men, this example I was telling you about, where that was free advertising for Coke because Coke's been such a big advertiser for so many years. Okay, so that's an example. Now take it across to your brand. So I don't want to go through Tumi's with too much detail. Okay, but let's have a look at Barbie. Okay, so Tumi has chosen Barbie, and she said, Rob, can I choose Barbie because Barbie is, you know, like it's like a cartoon / doll. And like, to me, Barbie's brilliant. There's so much you can do around Barbie. There's a movie with Barbie. It's got a doll. There's so much. I mean, just the movie itself is the perfect example. And when you could argue, okay, so Rob, what is the movie? Barbie, the movie, what is it? Is it advertising? Is it PR? Is it a promotion? Is it sales? Or is it direct marketing? Well, it's probably all of those things, because I can tell you right now that if you go and speak to Mattel or whoever owns Barbie, I bet you anything you like that Barbie now sales have shot through the roof of Barbie dolls or similar dolls because everybody's gone to see the Barbie movie. They might even have a Barbie about the, you know, a Barbie movie, a movie Barbie for the movie, that kind of thing, because that's what they usually do. They create merchandise around. So what is merchandise, as an example? Is merchandise a form of media? Well, if somebody has a Barbie doll, if you are a little girl and you walk into another little girl's room because your parents are visiting and you see the Barbie doll, you've been exposed to the Barbie brand. What is that? So that is sales. That's also linked to, could be part of, is the movie a promotion? The movie's advertising, but it's also promotion. So this is the problem. If you guys go and listen to and watch all the other stuff that you guys have done in terms of your studies for your BBA, okay, you will know one of the problems that we have these days is the blurring of the lines. This is what I spoke about last week in class when I said there is no more above the line or through the line or below the line. There is no line. It's all blurred. What could be construed as advertising might also look like a promotion. What could be construed as, you know, PR could also look like direct marketing. So let's say you are walking through Bentmore Gardens shopping center and there is a Barbie display in the promotions court, and they're giving away free tickets for Barbie at Ster-Kinekor or Sandton City, or they're doing it in Sandton City. Okay, so you go up and they say to you, hi, would you like a free Barbie ticket? And you say, yes, please, I like one of those. And they say, can we please have your details? Can you give us your WhatsApp number, or can you give us your email address, whatever? Sure, no problem, my WhatsApp or whatever it is. Then they communicate directly with you. Hi, person. Thanks so much for attending the Barbie promotion. Don't forget to go watch your movie. What is that? That is advertising and a sales promotion linked to direct marketing, because they've now contacted you directly using WhatsApp. Okay, so guys, what you have to do for your brand, whatever it's going to be, if you choose Apple iPhone, if you choose whatever you want to choose, is entirely, and some companies do this very, very, very well, like Coke, like KFC, like McDonald's, okay, and some companies do it very badly because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't have the knowledge, or they don't have the budget, or whatever it's going to be. So remember, you guys did that thing last semester. We were talking about blockbuster versus, you know, a niche. They can afford to turn Barbie into a blockbuster because it's got all the backing of the biggest. It's got 2 big stars to be in the show. They've got a huge budget. They've been able to. It's been done, and plus which they've got the backing of, you know, the Barbie brand. So it is, as an example. Now you may take something much smaller. You may decide, excuse me, that you're going to do something, a broken brand, a brand that's doing really badly. Like you may say, okay, my uncle owns a VCR repair company. Okay, now you guys might even know what a VCR is. So a video cassette recorder was in the days before we even had DVDs. Okay, so a VCR, now VCRs are very, very, very old-fashioned, and they've completely gone out of, so you might want to say to your uncle, it's time to find a new, way to earn an income because the VCR is dead. But you may then say to him, okay, let's put together as best we can an integrated media management strategy for you around your VCR repair company. Then you have to go and take the same 5 elements of the marketing communications mix and say, okay, uncle, what kind of advertising are we going to do? Can we afford to do advertising? Not really. Okay, let's give you a website. Okay, website is advertising because I'm paying for the space. Okay, and I'm going to get my www.vcrrepair.co.za, whatever it is, and then I'm going to tell people about that. Okay, so that's advertising. What kind of publicity can you do? So, uncle, let's take a photograph of you repairing, an old VCR, and let's send it to the Sandton Chronicle, and they're going to put in an article about your newspaper. Old school uncle still repairs VCRs, for a living, and then they put you smiling over there, and that's an example of publicity. Why? Because it's technically free. You approach the newspaper with a press release and a photograph, and they put that into the newspaper. Okay, promotion. Let's say uncle, decides again to go after Ben Moore, and he's able to wing a very, very cheap promotional space. Okay, and he goes into Ben Moore and he gets 1 day to the promotional space, and he's advertising his, VCR repairs, and it's like, bring 1 VCR for repair and get a free videotape. Now, this is obviously an extreme example, guys. Nobody uses VCRs anymore. Okay, that's an example of the VCR. Then he says, can I please have your contact information so I can let you know when we're going to have a special on again on VCRs? And you say, sure. And you give him your WhatsApp number. Then he sends you a WhatsApp. That's an example of direct marketing. Okay, and then he says, oh, by the way, we have a 2-for-1 special today. If you buy 1 VCR repair, you get 1 free. So there, what you've got is he's boosted the sales, and it's connected to a promotion. That's why we usually call them sales promotions and personal sales. They work hand in hand. Okay, so guys, so the template that you're working with is, the template for you is integrated media management, because of what we call disintermediation, as you guys know, because of a lack of awareness around things. So integrated media management, using those 5 elements of the marketing communications mix applied to your brand. Okay, so are there still, then Chris wanted me to speak to you about the academics. Okay, so each of the elements of the marketing communications mix should have an academic foundation. Okay, so you guys have to use 10 sources, 10 academic sources. Now, guys, don't only use academic sources. There's nothing wrong with using a business source, a business blog. Those sources are all great, but you can't only use a business source. You must also use an academic source. If you use the 2 of them together, you're going to get your best marks, because then I can see you've taken the academic foundation and you've applied it with a contemporary source. Okay, so what we said is you need to have 10 sources. Okay, 5 textbooks, 3 academic journal articles, and then your 2 textbooks, which are King and Hughes. So now for each one of those elements, and preferably throughout your assignment, but for each one of those elements, advertising, PR publicity, personal sales, sales promotions, and direct marketing, you need to have sources in there. Okay, so I can tell you right now as well, be very careful though, because you guys can't all use the same sources. You can't all use the same thing. Kotler and Armstrong, which I saw lots of copies of in the library. Kotler and Armstrong, well, Philip Kotler is like the godfather of marketing instruction and education around the world. He's in America. Okay, he has done all of the stuff that I'm discussing with you is in a Philip Kotler textbook. Everything that I've gone through with you. So you now are going to say, let's say, for example, you decide you're going to choose the Apple iPhone. And you're going to say, I walked, okay, and try not to use first and second person. Okay, so the iPhone was advertised in a Telkom brochure, and they had a big poster up at the Telkom shop at Sandton City, Telkom in Sandton City. Okay, so now that is an example. What is that? So Telkom is actually the primary brand there, but they're using, they're doing advertising for Apple. Now, I don't know if Apple is paying them for that, probably not, because they really desire to have the Apple phone, to sell people, because people like the phone. So now you're now going to go and analyze. You're going to say, okay, so now go and find your textbook. And your textbook is going to say, Kotler says 2020 edition on page 82 that it is not unusual for cell phone brands or brands to co-advertise with a company that does their distribution for them. Great. Now you've got your academic source. So you say, Kotler 2020 page 82 notes that companies will often advertise their merchandise using an intermediary party like a retailer. Full stop. For example, Apple will advertise their products in the Telkom shop, which shows how Apple is using a third-party mediator, like a retailer, to advertise their products. Now you're going to get your marks. And then you can say, once you've done it, you can say, in addition, and then you use Biz Community. Biz Community notes that there was a 3% increase in sales on Apple when they started advertising more in Telkom shops. Now you're going to get really high marks. Now you're heading for distinction plus, because you've given me your application to the specific element of the marketing communications mix. You've given me your popular source, and you've given me your academic source. And don't just limit it to one, guys. It's always good if you have 2 or 3 academic sources and 2 or 3 popular sources together. So, and as well, just to let you guys know, from F2 and from F1, if you have a long paragraph of stuff with one source at the end, that is not source integration. I don't know how that source. So your sources need to be together in the and what I'm going to do is, we've done this before. There are examples of this. I gave you guys examples, but I'm busy trying to prepare something for you to show you how this would be done for the strategy. Okay, so for the specific strategy. So it may seem like an enormously huge amount of work, and it may seem very complicated, but actually it's not. All we're trying to do is prepare you guys and to show you that when you go into industry and the company that is paying you a salary now to work for them, they're now going to say, okay, what do you suggest? How are we going to get together, and how are we going to rack our brains to try and create awareness of our specific brand? Because it's very, very, very difficult to do so in this day and age. So, Onalena, I hope that answers your question. Guys, we will go through the assignment at the beginning of each session, just to remind you. Okay, but the thing is, you are most welcome to let me know what requirements you have and how I can help you. Just also on that point, to also then let you guys know, and this is very important. Okay, so far the only person who's told me what brand they're going to do is Tumi. So what I had wanted you guys to do is, please tell me what brand you're going to do on the WhatsApp group, so that nobody else chooses it. Because if 2 students come to the presentation, because you have to present this, okay, on that, and remember, the presentation must look beautiful, it must pop, it must be blingy. So that if you were an integrated media management consultant and strategist, and I invited you to my company, because I don't have a marketing department, now I'm inviting you to my company to come in and present to me an integrated media management strategist, because I'm going to hire you as a consultant. It needs to be impressive. I have sat in on many presentations where I was on client sides, in other words, companies that presented to me, where they would present strategies to me, and I'd be like, okay, that strategy stands out because you can see they really went the extra mile. I've also been in situations where I have presented to clients. So I have been the strategist who's presented to clients. I've seen both sides because of the experience that I've had. Okay, and you can definitely tell when a presentation is well put together, it's well researched, it's well prepared, and it looks great. It pops. It's not just some dull, boring PowerPoint presentation. It's really got to pop on the page, and it's going to look beautiful. So don't freak out. Don't go and hire a graphic designer. You can do this. There are millions of free images. Just make it look as pretty as you can. I can see the difference between somebody who just put together a PowerPoint presentation and somebody who went to go and find images and put them in and add bling and whatever it is. So that's the difference. So When you've done that, then you're going to be presenting it to us. Question, Nthabiseng? Isn't Nthabiseng? Shoot.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Rob. I think what I want to find out, so it says on the brief that we must clearly and effectively communicate a strategic line of argument as justified by relevant academic sources, right? And then it says,
Yes.
using academic texts, plan and propose workable ideas for strategic brand management. So what I want to find out from you is
Yes.
that with the assignment, are we
Yes.
selecting a brand, then dissecting and analyzing an existing successful strategy? For example, with the brand that Tumi chose, which is Barbie, everyone has
Yes.
been raving about, the marketing strategy and how the budget for marketing was actually greater than the budget for production, right? So that's the
Wow.
first question. So
Okay.
secondly, do we also maybe look at the current strategy of an existing brand that's not doing so well, and then suggest what the brand can do better using the 5 elements of the marketing communication mix? So I'm just trying to understand what is the bottom line of the whole assignment from what we need to work on.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Nthabiseng. It's a great question. Okay, so just to let you know and just to answer your question, it depends on the brand that you're going to choose. If you choose a very successful brand like Barbie, okay, most of what you're going to be doing is you're going to be analyzing that success. You may have 1 or 2 things to add, but it may not be a lot. For example, if you have a look, I know Barbie's been banned in Vietnam, and it has something to do with some line that they put on the map. Okay, so, and I know it's been banned in one other country, I think Afghanistan, and that may be because it's too Western and there's too much flesh revealed, and she looks too, her clothing is. I'm not really sure what it is, but you might say, okay, so the only recommendation you would have is, okay, how do we get Barbie into those markets where it's been banned? They're going to watch it anyway, but how do you get Barbie into those markets where it's been banned? Or maybe your question would be is, how do we convert non-Barbie users? Because some people are not going to watch Barbie because it's not intellectual enough. I mean, I know for me, I definitely want to see Oppenheimer. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm not going to rush out and watch Barbie. Probably. I don't know. It looks like it could be quite fun. I mean, I like Margot Robbie. I like, Ryan Gosling. I think that, they're fun, and it looks like quite fun, but it's not gonna, it's not an earth-shattering. I like, sort of historical drama. I'm like a Churchill, of Oppenheimer. That's more my scene. But how would you convince me to go and watch Barbie? What would your selling point be? If you've got kids, okay, then they're all going to go watch Barbie, so that you are a captive audience as a parent. But in the case of Barbie, there will be very, very, very few recommendations that you have that they could do better, because the Americans are so good at marketing, and they're so good, Hollywood is so good at what it does, that there'll be very, very, very few, unless there's a backlash. There may not be a backlash. Why is Barbie, for example, why is Barbie white? Why is the whole show white? There's no spin over that. You're not being inclusive. Why is Barbie not Asian? Why is Barbie not black? Those kind, and there could be some backlash. So how would you deal with that, as an example? But in that case, there wouldn't be a lot. You would basically just be doing an analysis. But because you're analyzing it, and because you don't have access to the strategy, when you analyze it, I can see, aha, Nthabiseng understands the elements of the marketing communications mix. She understands the importance of integrated media management. She understands how it all fits together. And I can confidently say that she's going to go into industry and go and do the same for her company. Therefore, she's passing this module because she's done a really good assignment. She's ticked all the boxes, and therefore she's going to get her BBA. Now, in Nthabiseng, in your case, you're already doing that because you're already working, so you really are able to do that for the company that you do. So if no, you don't have to do that. That's the one extreme. The other extreme is you can even take, if you want to, a company that you yourself want to start as an entrepreneurial venture. Okay, and you can tell me from scratch, nobody's even heard of it before. You can put together an entire strategy, an integrated media management strategy, explaining how you intend to make this company something that is, or products something that is very successful. That's on the other extreme Or you can take a very bad brand that's got very bad things, and you can analyze and say, this is where they haven't integrated their media. This is where they haven't done a good job. Why isn't there a connection between, you know, their marketing, or sorry, their advertising and their PR and whatever? I'll give you an example now. Okay, so I'll give you two examples. A couple of years ago, Young and Rubicon, which is an ad agency, as you guys know, was tasked with helping Pick n Pay come up with a newer logo. This must have been 10, 15 years ago. And Pick n Pay changed their logo. Okay, but they didn't, because they had franchise stores and corporate stores, and because it was a huge thing, they rolled over the change of logo over time. So you went into some Pick n Pay stores and they had the new logo, and some Pick n Pay stores had the old logo, and some and it was just a big mess. Okay, so I'll give you an example, just also to let you know, and actually, I think it might have been Boston. It might have been Boston, I'm not sure. I attended a graduation ceremony many moons ago, and there was a woman who spoke there, okay, and she used to work for Standard Bank, and she specifically mentioned a bank also somewhere in South America. And she said, guys, on Friday, the bank was Bank A. On Monday morning, when we woke up, it was Bank B. They changed everything in 3 days. They changed every single branch's logos. They issued everybody with new cards that had the new logo. They had a new website, new stationery, new advertising. Everything was done. That's very difficult to achieve. You need to have a huge budget. Okay, but that is an example of a very successful company. When you have these, you know, rollouts over time. So now, for example, just also to give you guys another example, Burger King in America is now going to go, they're now changing their logo again. They're doing a retro logo. So to sort of hark back to the 70s, I don't know why. I don't think there's anything wrong with their current logo, but Burger King has now decided, no, we need a retro look because we're doing retro burgers and people need to connect with our brand better because it's got like a retro thing. They're also doing a phased rollout because remember, they have franchisees who are involved. Okay, and the franchisees need to pay for this new marketing and this new signage and so on and so forth. And because of that, okay, they're doing a phased rollout. I think that's a mistake. A company like Burger King should be able to say, listen, this is the thing. We're all changing our logos. You guys have 6 months to comply. We'll do it for you, etc. And then once you've done the whole thing, then we all bring it out together and say, this is the new Burger King. It's now being launched. Okay, so you would then, if you had to do Burger King example, that will be one of your criticisms. So you may take a brand like, for example, the SABC, okay, and say, okay, let's see how the SABC, now the SABC is in the media field, but the SABC is also a brand. So you can say, okay, what has the SABC done well? And what has it done badly? Well, they've done a lot badly. I'm sorry to have to say. Same thing with SAA. What has SAA done well? What has SAA done badly? If you were tasked with helping the SAA to re-emerge as South Africa's premier flying brand, what would you suggest in terms of advertising, PR publicity, sales promotions, personal sales, and direct marketing? I can tell you the biggest issue is going to be around PR because there's so much negative publicity and so much negative brand equity around SAA, okay, because it's so tied to government, that is going to be the big issue. Okay, so, and guys, you've done this before. You did it, you had the ANC to do, where there was one of your first brands. You know, you did it with MyFM. These are things that you have done before. So it's wonderful. And please feel free to ask questions until you understand and you completely, you know what's happening in terms of how you feel. But thank you, Ntabi, saying great question. Does it answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you, Rob.
Cool. Okay, no problem. Okay, so guys, you can do a new brand. You can do an old brand that's very successful, a new brand that's very successful. You can do an old brand that's unsuccessful, that was successful, that's no longer successful. That's the whole thing. Because when you go into industry, you need to be able to tell people they are paying you to help them to promote their company, to promote their product or service using integrated media management. That's why you're getting the degree. So I know that integrated media management is not your only degree for your Bachelor of Business Administration. But remember, that's what it is. You are going to go into the world with a Bachelor of Business Administration so that you can administer a building, a brand, a company, a product, a service, or an idea, and help the company break through the clutter. Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to people using your product or service or idea. Otherwise, you're not going to make money. And that's why they're going to be hiring you. So You guys all had exposed to this before. I mean, like, for example, some of you run your own sort of entrepreneurial stuff. Some of you work for companies already, etc. So it's entirely up to you. Are there any other questions around this? Or do you have a better understanding? Annalena, I know that you had your concerns. Do you understand all of these concepts better? Do you guys have any other questions? And we'll go through it again and again and again, guys. But you'll never ever come. I mean, if it's a really good company, you'll never ever get to the end of how much they've done in terms of marketing. It is. I mean, Coke has done so much in the last 137 years, okay, since they've been around, because they're the same age as Joburg. They have done so much that you could never, I will be going through little bits and pieces with you. You guys also remember, just to give you guys another example, okay, of Coke. You remember a couple of years ago, they had different names on the Coke bottles. Okay, and then apparently at one stage, you could even send details through to Coke, and then they would, I think there was even a machine where what they did was you could type in your name and they would actually issue you with a Coke bottle with your name on it. Some people actually kept those bottles or those cans. They never ever used them. It was like, oh, it's a Coke bottle. And you'd run around in stores looking for a Coke bottle with your name on it. So, you know, I mean, can you imagine that kind of top of mind awareness, that kind of what we call brand salience? That's what you're doing. So wherever you go, and one of the things that makes Coke so successful is simply the distribution strategy, which takes you back to the 4 elements of the marketing mix: product, price, place, promotion, place. The distribution strategy is so good because wherever you go, if you are going to be putting Coke in, let's say you're a cafe owner and you say, okay, we need to have Coke in the cafe. Okay, you're going to approach Coke because people want to buy Coke. You're going to approach Coca-Cola. They say, okay, we'll sell you Coke, but it needs to be in one of our fridges. It cannot be in a non-Coke fridge. And please also note, you cannot put non-Coke products in a Coke fridge. And if we see you doing it, well, then we're going to have problems. And then we might even decide not to supply you with Coke anymore. That's their strategy. I mean, I've just finished watching, I don't know if you guys watch Netflix. I've just finished watching a fascinating 6-part series on OxyContin called Painkiller on Netflix. Fascinatingly interesting. And how they got people hooked on OxyContin, because OxyContin is an opioid like heroin. Okay, and they got people hooked on it. It was their sales ladies. They made sure they hired young college graduates, okay, women, all women, who were very in shape. They had nice bodies, they looked nice, they dressed well. And they went and schmoozed all the doctors. They went and spoke to the doctors, and they went and hung out with the doctors, and they went and sort of flirted with the doctors. So the doctors, all because they wanted to, you know, flirt with these young ladies, started prescribing OxyContin, which then Purdue Pharma, which is the company that made the drug, started selling so much of the stuff that people started becoming addicted to it, and people started dying because it was like selling drugs because it was so strong. So that their distribution strategy was incredible because they went to the doctors and the doctors sold it for them to patients. Because when patients came to them with pain, they said, well, what can you do for my pain, doctor? Said, okay, well, no Vicodin, no whatever it is, we're going to give you OxyContin, which is, and it's oxycodone. It's actually codeine and morphine together. It's highly addictive. It's very banned. I think in South Africa, I spoke to a pharmacist yesterday. It's a Schedule 6 drug in South Africa. Very difficult to get. You need a prescription from a doctor and those kind of things. So guys, you can see very cleverly how they did. That was their strategy. So, and you can say as well, Rob, let's have a Coke in terms of innovation. Coke doesn't innovate their product. Okay, it's still sugary water. It's the same formula they've used for 137 years. They don't change it. They innovate the way they sell their product. They innovate the way they communicate their product. They innovate the way they market their product through media, but they don't innovate the product. They tried that once, as I told you guys last week in 1985, okay, when they had the Cola Wars. Pepsi did some blind taste tests. People said, oh, we prefer the taste of Pepsi. Coke had a nervous breakdown, introduced a new product in America called New Coke. That was a huge failure. People were pouring it down the drains. They said, we hate the taste. Coke quickly pedaled and said, oh my gosh, you've made a mistake. So then they reintroduced Classic Coke. So then you had Classic Coke and you had New Coke, and that's the whole thing. And then over time, as they realized that they'd made a huge mistake, they phased out New Coke because it wasn't free. People didn't like it. And then only had Classic Coke. You may remember a couple of years ago, we had Vanilla Coke in South Africa, which we don't have anymore. We had Cherry Coke, which they don't really have in South Africa. They've got it in America. Dr. Pepper does cherry cola. So now you can see the only ways where Coke has innovated, and the reason why they've done that is because they've been forced in terms of legislation. We have Coke Zero, we have Coke Lights, and we have the normal Coke. But even in South Africa, go and have a look on a Coke bottle. I'm not trying to convert you to Coke, okay, if you guys drink it or if you hate it, because it is actually very bad for you, okay. If you go and have a look now, go look at the thingy, all at the bottom, it says original Coke, less sugar, less sugar, less sugar. Why? Because the South African government has mandated less sugar because of the sugar tax. And they said, we have an obesity problem in South Africa. We need to stop people from drinking so much soda because they're getting fat and they're having heart attacks and they're having diabetes, and it's creating a strain in our health system. So how are we going? And what is that all tied to? PESEL. Political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental, all of those factors affect the environment in which your brand exists. So it all ties back together to what we've discussed. Okay, so guys, I hope that answers your question. Onlena, anybody else? Do you guys have any other questions around the assignment? Are you guys all good?
No, I'm okay, Rob.
Are you good? Okay, cool. Thanks, Onlena. Thank you so much. Michelle, you have your hand up.
So just in terms of like exactly with the, do I need to use possibly like the person that made the movie or like another different?
Sorry, Michelle, you're breaking up a little bit. Please, won't you say that again?
No, I'm saying, can I choose the company that makes the movie instead of like the actual movie as a topic?
The company that, and you said you can use the company. Yes, you don't have to use the product. You can use the company. So you said VIX. Was it VIX that you said? I'm not sure if you said VIX.
No, actually, I have like a topic in mind. So I just want to check out what make it.
Sorry, Michelle, you're breaking up a little bit, but just to answer your question, guys, you can choose anything. You don't have to, there are no limitations, okay? You can choose anything. You can create a fantasy brand if you want to and create something around, but it needs to be well done. If you're going to put together something that doesn't exist, Chris and I discussed it, and, so they were, we debated whether it was a good idea or not, but I'm not creating any limitations. You can choose any brand you want. It can be a company, or it can be the product that they make. It can be like, for example, Michelle, I'm not sure what you said in terms of the product that you wanted to choose, but like Johnson & Johnson, guys, Johnson & Johnson or Unilever. Unilever is the company. Unilever does Handy Andy. I think they do Sunlight Liquid. They do Surf washing powder. They do Sunlight washing powder. They do Omo. I think those are all Unilever. Okay. Pioneer Foods does Liquid Fruit. They do Wheat Pix, I think, is a Bokomo. I'm not sure if Bokomo is part of Pioneer Foods, but all these holding companies, AB InBev, which is now taken over from South African Breweries, does a whole bunch of. They do Castle. They do Lion. They do Castle Milk Stout, they do Black Label, they do Heineken, they do what you can either choose the company, the holding company, or you can choose one of their brands. It's entirely up to you. If you want to look at Alphabet, for example, Alphabet runs Google and YouTube. Those are two major, but the name of the holding company is Alphabet. If you have a look at what's that other company? Meta does Facebook, and they do Instagram. Michelle, you have a question? Let me just quickly see your chat. See what it says here, and then I'll answer. 3 brands being Walt Disney Company, WWE, and Amazon Prime. I need the clarity before making the decision. Okay, cool. You can do Walt Disney, that's fine. You could do that's the wrestling, WWE is wrestling, or Amazon Prime. Yeah, that's cool. You can do that. I'm not sure if Barbie is part of Walt Disney. I don't know that it is, but it's fine. You can do Walt Disney as long as you're not doing Barbie. And I know that Star Wars falls under Walt Disney, so you could, if somebody wanted to do Star Wars, you could do Star Wars, but there will be some Disney in it because Disney's taken over. And obviously, Michelle, if you do Disney, for example, you will Star Wars will only be one of your elements to focus on. You'll still be speaking about Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Plus, etc., all those kinds of things. But yes, any of those is You can either choose the holding company or you can choose a brand. You can take it right. Yeah, it's entirely up to you. Okay. Other questions? Thanks, Michelle, for clarifying on message on chat. Any other questions, guys? Are you all good? Are there any other questions related to? Cool. Okay. Oh, yes. Nothando?
Hi. So you did say that we could either take an existing strategy and analyze that, or we could formulate our own strategy. But I wanted to ask, for example, with the Coca-Cola brand,
Yes.
it does have an existing strategy already, but could
Yes.
I pick a brand that has an existing strategy and formulate my own strategy, so not analyze an existing one? So with Coca-Cola, they obviously have, you know, their own things going on, the strategy, the promotions, the advertising, but then I take it as if they don't, and then, you know, start from the bottom and say they could do this, they could advertise like this, and, you know, all of that.
Yes, you can do that. It's fine. I would say that it would be nice to know what they are doing and how you saying they should do differently, but it's not an absolute requirement. If you didn't do it, it would be fine. All you need to do is, if you can justify why you're suggesting that strategy, that's fine. So if you want to do that, that's fine. There's also no limitation there. So if you want to take a completely different tack on the matter and you're welcome to it, that's absolutely fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Just remember, it needs to be comprehensive. You must include all of the elements, and then you need to base it in it needs to have its academic foundation. But yeah, guys, this is what's so nice about this thing. It gives you the freedom to be creative and get your marks. You can still get your marks. You can still, and it's more fun, you know. So that was the whole idea when we sat down and designed it. It was designed to be a strategy that was going to be, you know, more fun and yeah. So yes, cool.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions around I see there's another chat. Let me just see, there's another chat, and I think that's different. Sorry, this thing is a bit. Okay, no, that's Michelle's chat. Okay, let me just close this. I'll go back to the thing where I was. Okay. Okay, guys, so that's that then. So then let's move on to today's stuff. If there's no, can you guys all hear me? Okay, I hope you can. Let's move on to today's lecture. If you guys are happy with that, if there are any other good guys, also just to let you know, sorry, one of the students has chosen, although it's not on the WhatsApp group. One student has chosen Pepcore as well. So because I think he works for Pepcore, so he's choosing Pepcore, not specifically Pep stores, but Pepcore, the company. So Pepcore is off the market, as well as is Barbie. I'm assuming Michelle's going to do Walt Disney. But guys, what I'm trying to say to you early on is, please remember as well, if somebody comes to the class, okay, and they do their presentation after you, and you presented Barbie, and then they present Barbie, then the second person is unfortunately going to have to do the supplementary, because you cannot present the same brand. Okay, so you can present different elements. I mean, if somebody and I said, listen, I want to do Mattel, and there's a reference to Barbie, well, I'm not sure if Mattel owns Barbie. I'm not sure who owns Barbie. Okay, that will be fine, but it can't be the predominant thing. Likewise, let's say somebody chooses Star Wars, and now Michelle decides she's going to do Disney. Okay, so Michelle's going to refer partly to Disney in her assignment, but not everything. Sorry, partly to Star Wars in her assignment, and the person doing Star Wars is going to refer partly to Disney in their assignment, but they're going to be quite different. Okay, so guys, you need to, and also remember, as well, if you look at the requirements, please make sure that you're not using the same sources. So if you all want to use Kotler and Armstrong, that's fine. Okay, but you can't use Kotler and Armstrong, the same page, the same reference. Okay, because that's going to get you, I'm like, okay, but that means that two students use exactly the same reference, because that then seems to suggest that students were working together. Remember, you can't do this assignment in groups. You can get together if you wanted to and all choose the sources together and then dish out sources to everybody. That you could do. Okay, but you can't share the sources, because if somebody says Cutler and Armstrong on page 59 of the 2020 edition says that consistent, clear, and therefore compelling communications is what's important for integrated media management, and then some student says exactly the same thing in different wording, I'm going to get nervous. I'm like, okay, but that means that students, you know, it seems to be so just make sure. That's why I had suggested that you guys put on the WhatsApp group which sources you're going to use. Okay, so you can book that source. Okay, and then also decide which brand you're going to use, so you can book that brand. Because like I said, if the second student who pitches up at the presentation is doing the same as the previous student, that second student is going to be unfortunately forced automatically to do the supplementary, because we can't have students presenting the same brand. Okay, so I'm not saying you have to reveal the strategy on WhatsApp, but at least choose the brands that it's reserved for you. So for example, yeah, okay, the one student is doing Pepcore, Trimi is doing Barbie. You may decide you want to do, you know, and of course you can't do Coke because I'm using Coke as the template to discuss with you guys. Okay, but other than that, it really is free range, guys. This is a fun assignment. This should be the most fun you've done all year. You can have so much fun with the assignment. There's so much, you know, scope for creativity and so much scope just to have a good time and enjoy, you know, the information. And I can then get a really good idea for where you're at in terms of, you know, integrated media management, because nobody wants to walk away from this course knowing that it was a disaster. Everybody wants to walk away from this course knowing that it was, that they loved it and that they learned something from it, and that it'll actually enhance their degree and help them when they go into industry and say, okay, this was fabulous. I mean, you don't want to, you know, you don't want a horrible subject where you're not enjoying the subject. You want to enjoy the subject. That's really important, and I understand that, you know. So there we go. Okay, cool. So guys, do you want to take a break before we get into the stuff, or do you just want me to continue? What is going to work for you guys? Can you please advise me what's going to work for you guys? Because I don't want you guys to drop off and not come back after if we do have a break. Maybe you need to go use the bathroom quick, or just have a cigarette, or grab a cup of tea, or I don't know what you guys want to do. So what is going to work best for you guys? Beverly, SRC, been very quiet today. Dee Dee. Dennis. Take a break. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, guys, shall we say it's now 14:34? Shall we take a break until 10 to 3? Okay, so we'll take a break at 10 to 3 until 10 to 3, so 14:50, and then we'll come back, and then I'm going to go through the notes of today's class with you, which are all about creativity, which you can also then use in your presentations. Cool. Okay, cool. Thanks, Ntabi Singh. Cool. Okay, awesome. Great. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in 15 minutes. Enjoy your break. See you soon. Thanks. Don't leave. Thanks. Bye. Hey guys, okay, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. Okay, cool. So,
Rob, hi.
how's it, Chris?
Can I run something by you in the class quick?
Sure.
For next week's class?
Yes, sure.
What I'm thinking is, I want to do a presentation like the students will be expected to do. So 20 minutes, yes?
Okay.
Right. So then part of next week's class will be me doing my 20-minute presentation, trying to get a distinction from you.
Cool.
And you will feed back to me and tell me like what my marks would be. And then that document will make it available. And then between you and the class, can maybe talk about how I could have done it better or what I could have added when it comes to all sides of this, the academics and the sources that I needed, plus the strategy and all research sides of this. And I'll do the video thing and have the what the brief requires in terms of we want textbooks and stuff, or books at least from the library. And my question is to you and to everyone, do you feel like that would be useful?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's an amazing idea. I think it's smart, and I think it's really cool, and I think it brings it to light for the students. And I think it's marvelous, and I think it'll also be great just to see, how you do it. It'll give something for the students to calibrate against, which is not always from me. Sometimes it's nice to have fresh blood and new insights. I think it's a great idea, and it'll be very interesting to see how you tackle it. Because obviously you don't really have a background in media. I mean, I don't have a great background in media myself. I mean, my background in media is partial, and I was, some media, but I think it's a great idea, Chris. I think it'll be excellent, and I think it'll really help to contextualize the students. So I love it. I can't speak for the other students, but yeah.
Okay, cool.
What do you guys think?
Awesome. Cool. Anyone else? Should we do that? Would that be useful for you guys? Thumbs up from Notando. Thank you. Thumbs up from Michelle.
I missed the suggestion or the question.
The suggestion is for me to do a presentation next week to Rob as if I'm a student answering this brief and doing this project with a presentation and a slideshow. Similar to, well, not similar to, but simulating what you guys have to do and presenting like you guys are going to in a week. And then asking Rob how I did, what my marks are, and then asking you guys how you think it could be better or what could be improved, and trying to do something useful like that for you guys. That's the suggestion.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm happy with that.
Okay, cool. And then that way, like, yeah, you'll have an example and you'll sort of be able to see it in action. I want to do it on, I was thinking about it just now. I want to do it on Air Jordan as a brand, which is then going to bring in Nike, I guess, but part of the discussions we'll have. And I heard there were these questions about holding companies versus if it's Disney, it's things are going to kind of interlink with each other. But then I was thinking about, like, what if the ones you choose don't have that sort of like owned by something else or connected to something else? Because Jordan and Michael Jordan is his own brand, and then it's the sneakers, which is Air Jordan's own thing, and then it's Nike, which is his own brand. So a lot of kind of overlaps in the example. So I'm thinking of doing one that's like that, and then another one that's sort of more straightforward. But we'll see. Let's just see in the chat. But yeah, I'll make the time next week to do that. Then when you come next week to class, I will be presenting. We'll see how I do.
Because I think it's really, really, really good. You know, I mean, you know, I think it's really smart. I think it's brilliant. I think it's genius. You know, and I'm sure that it's going to be really, really good. And I love the whole idea of, I mean, I don't want to put you in a box, you know, and I don't want you to do. I love the idea of Air Jordan, and that's exactly what we're talking about in terms of integrated, you know, media management, because you're comboing two brands, so you have the brands dovetailing and piggybacking on one another. So Nike obviously approached, you know, Michael Jordan and said, listen, you are phenomenal, you know, and so would you, it's the same thing with, you know, Dr. Dre and Beats, I think they're called Beats, you know, those headphones, you know, so it's super, super smart. It really is. And it's very clever of brands, because basically what Michael Jordan is the brand ambassador, and he's an ambassador for Nike. So they often do it. It's one of the reasons why sports, you know, companies are so successful, because they attach themselves, and because of the psychological concept of transference, what happens is, you know, the positive things that we associate with Michael Jordan then get transferred over to, you know, Nike, and so I think it's a fabulous idea. I really do. And you know, I mean, it's I'm sure it's going to be excellent, you know, so it's great.
Yeah, I just don't want to overcomplicate it, because maybe sort of as an example, Barbie is Barbie, you know.
Yes.
But then Jordan has all these other attachments, so I want it to be as useful as possible.
Absolutely. I'm going to pick up on that for a moment, Chris, because I think it's really good. And what I'm going to say is, guys, it's a great example of integration, because what you're doing is, see, and there you're integrating across media, but you're also integrating between brands, which is important. So remember, you know, your stuff that you're doing for your BBA is not limited. They're all linked. Everything that you've done in this entire degree, they're all linked to each other. Okay, and so we sometimes tend to focus in silos because we deal with specific you know, subjects, but like, for example, your research module has a lot of bearing on what we're discussing, you know, here today. So you can also integrate between, and then, you know, let's say, for example, Michael Jordan goes to, you know, there's a basketball game. Okay, and let's say he does like a charity basketball game, you know, and a whole bunch of people rock, you know, at the charity basketball game, and he stops and he signs autographs and that kind of thing, you know, and he's literally doing it because he wants to promote, you know, a children's charity or something. But in the interim, you know, you've got advertising, you've got lots of PR and publicity, you've got a sales promotion, you've got personal sales, they're all linked. And the only element that may be missing from that specific, you know, a charity event would be direct marketing, unless they have a database at Nike and they say, well, you know, we're going to contact people and invite them to this thing, or there's certain people. But it's a great example. It really is. And the thing is, you know, we're dealing with real world here, where we often have these overlaps. It's super cool. I love it. So please, okay, cool. Thanks, Dee Dee, for letting us know. All the best with your research project. And cool. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you. Thanks for your help. And cool. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
You guys soon. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Ciao, bye. So yes, guys. You know, I think it's a great example, but I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my. Are there any other questions? Are you guys all good at this point? Are you guys all fine? I'm assuming I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go through today's slides with you guys. Okay, so now, guys, remember, everything that we do in theory is still needs to be applied to. Let me see if I can, it doesn't want to let me. It doesn't want, oh goodness. Okay, let's see if this is gonna. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna. You should be able to see the presentation now. It says HIMM432_1 creativity and innovation. Week 10. It's got like a coffee undertone. That's sort of the theme. Can you see it? I'm hoping that you can. If you can't, please let me know. I'll be checking out the chat box. Okay, but I'm
Yes,
assuming
we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matando. Thanks. Okay, cool. Okay, so guys, all right, so creativity and innovation. Okay, so in this session, what we're going to be doing today is we're looking at one of the most important strategic issues for media firms, which is creativity. All right, so the links between this and the previous chapters are indeed strong. Creativity is the first stage of innovation. Innovation is implicit in all technological advance. Sorry about the spelling mistake there. And technical advances are a major driver of strategic change in the media. Okay, so guys, but it's not just about technological advances. Okay, it's about, think again about PESTLE. Take everything back to PESTLE. Technology drives, they have a knock-on effect. We have social effects having a knock on technology knocking on social, on political, on economic, etc. They all have these knock-on effects. I saw some articles yesterday online about the Russian ruble is now doing really, really badly, and they're saying that American sanctions or Western sanctions are finally catching up with Russia. I don't know to what extent that's true. Some people say that's true, it's not, etc. We know that the war in Ukraine has definitely had a huge effect on pricing, which has caused major knock-on effects in terms of social, in terms of political, etc., etc. The brouhaha around South Africa in terms of, you know, the BRICS summit now and Vladimir Putin not coming because he's got a warrant of arrest against him with the International Court of Justice, etc. And South Africa being on the side of Russia, which is not going down with America, which is a major trading partner of South Africa, etc. And, you know, so guys, these are all examples of, I hope you guys can also see and hear me. My computer says that there's a lot of CPU being used, so I'm trying not to see if I can close this thing here, but shutting you down. I hope it's going to close the whole thing. Okay, and I'm just trying to get rid of some of the stuff over here so that I don't overload the system too much. Okay. All right, so guys, let me know if you can't hear me. Just either send me a shout out via chat, or please, you know, just open up your microphone and then just leave a message. Thanks. Okay, so guys, the links between all of these things, innovation is a wonderful thing, and innovation is important. Okay, and it is definitely a major driver of strategic change in the media. But innovation in digital or in technology that affects the way media is used is different to innovation in terms of either people innovation or product innovation. So let's look again, for example, at Coke. Okay, Coke still has their top seller of all time, is their original formula. They've been using it for more than 100 years. It's the same thing. You can argue the same thing with McDonald's. What is it? It's a beef burger. Beef comes from cow. That hasn't really changed. We now either have, you know, genetically modified cow, RSBT hormones, whatever it is, or, you know, sort of a homegrown or a, you know, sort of free range, etc. But the whole idea of the burger really hasn't innovated all that much. You know, when we start looking at food innovations, you know, those may affect things in the future. But think about love, for example. Okay, so now love sounds like a very ephemeral, you know, very ethereal, very sort of wishy-washy, gossamer-like, chimeric kind of concept. But you can argue that love is not something that needs to innovate. Love is love, you know, and the way in which we love people is not necessarily, you know, different or innovative. It's just the same. The way that we maybe approach it is different in as much as, you know, the way we connect with other human beings for love. I mean, 100 years ago, there was no such thing as a dating app. I mean, I even know there's a woman that I know, I wouldn't call her a friend necessarily, somebody that I know, she met her husband on a dating app. And they got to know each other on, you know, off the dating app, and they dated and they got married, and they've been married for like 10 years, really, got 2 kids, and, you know, and that was all from a dating app. That was unthinkable, you know, in the 1945 or 1943 when the Second World War was on. Then it was letters. You send letters back and forth between people. And, you know, 200 years ago, if there was you know, a chap who wanted to, you know, hang out with some lovely lady and he wanted to date her, to get on his horse and go and see her, or walk to go and see her. So, but love itself as a concept hasn't changed. Okay, so, and then also think about innovation in terms of politics. Okay, innovation in terms of social things, innovation in terms of legal and environmental. Some things are different, some things have changed, it's stayed the same. Okay, but by the end of this lecture, you should be able to understand that creativity is important for media, in terms of media firms, understand what creates creativity in an organization, know the specific roles that creativity plays in these organizations, understand creativity from an economic perspective, so in other words, as a resource, and then understand that creativity is exacerbated in environments of turbulence. Okay, so the need to be creative in turbulent environments. Okay, so guys, Kung is your reference over here, specifically pages 105 to 108. Okay, so let's have a look over here at your introduction. So the focus of today and of this chapter is why creativity is strategically important for these media organizations, why that importance is increasing in the current environment as a result of technological advances and the resulting changes in platforms, products, and consumption habits. They must now be creative in a broader realm than simply the content they produce. And think about it, guys, this speaks directly to what we're speaking about early on. The whole idea of integrating media needs innovation, needs creativity. How do you, remember as well, a lot of companies don't necessarily have the budgets that they do for a Barbie or an Air Jordan or a Coke, whatever it is. So what do you do if you have a company, okay, that is very that is really battling to you know, to get their message out there, and they're doing it in such a way without a budget? How do you do zero-based budgeting or very, very limited budgeting in order to create? And this is a huge challenge. I have worked in companies, both on client side and on you know, and on a creative team or whatever it is, to make suggestions as to how you are able to really draw blood from a stone. And let me ask you guys a question, because I really wanted it to be more of an interactive class. What is the one element that you can really work with the most if you have zero-based budgeting? So what do you guys think? What if you've got no money, what is the one element that you can really focus on of the marketing communications elements where you can really try to milk something? We've discussed it before. I'll give you guys a clue. It would be a strategy that a business like the SPCA would use as much as possible. They have very, very little money for doing, you know, paid for stuff. So what element of the marketing communications mix, or which elements can we use to create awareness of a product or a service or an idea that are zero-based budgets? What would you guys say? What do you guys think?
I think either direct marketing.
Yes, very well done, Tabi Singh. Good. And
Okay. Or public relations.
Brilliant. Absolutely correct. Yep. Direct marketing. Thank you, Tabi Singh. See, your experience in industry helps a lot, and well done. Thank you so much for the contribution. Public or direct marketing, guys, it takes very little effort and no money to send out. It literally might be an hour of somebody's time, okay, to post a couple of Facebook posts or some Instagram stories, or, you know, some threads or whatever it is, and to send an email out to your database. quick, chop, not a lot of time. You can get one of your staff members to do it. And publicity is free. All you need to do is place the press release or the photograph. But if you think about how press releases, how people adore animals and take well to animals, it's very easy for people to fall in love with animals and to use animals as a cause. Okay, so a lovely photograph of some YouTube video of some little kitten that got rescued from a terrible situation, and it's everybody's heart melts. I mean, I know I see PETA adverts all the time, and obviously that's paid for, but PETA does a lot of advertising, and of course they use animals to, and you might say, well, it's manipulative. Well, some people think they're too radical, etc., but they are trying to protect animals, from abuse and from, violations of their, in inverted commas, rights. And I know this is also a controversial issue, but certainly, it's, if you have a company with, if a company hires you as a consultant next year when you're in industry, and they say, listen, I've got no money, then what you can do is say to them, well, do you have a database? That's the first question. And if you don't, can you develop a database? And second of all, can you do something with publicity? Do you have a publicity angle? Because I have reliably studied that 75%, I think, especially in the case of community newspapers, and of course that relates to all media, 75% of what we see in media comes from a press release. So somebody put it together and put together a press release. If you remember the case of Bell Pottinger, which is the PR company that tried to get the Guptas out of trouble, and the whole Zuma connection, and that they were manipulating the rand, and getting it to go up and down, and the brouhaha, and they no longer exist. But think about that over there, how they use that as spin. Something they also tried in this show that I just finished watching on Netflix, where they're trying to spin positively the whole idea that OxyContin is not bad for people. It was only the junkies. They focus on the junkies. Only the junkies are abusing it. Only the junkies are abusing it. Only the junkies. But eventually, unfortunately, the truth of the matter caught up with them, and they had actually states. So there were states in the United States, like Maine and Connecticut and Idaho and Iowa, that were actually suing OxyContin because there were people who were dying from this drug that they were abusing. So, but think about it, and that also, if a company has negative publicity, it's very, very difficult to undo that, and they can really scupper an effective integrated media management campaign. Think of SAA again as the perfect example, okay, and the reputational damage they have suffered over the years because of what's happened. You can even argue the same for Brand South Africa. If one of you was going to choose Brand South Africa, very difficult brand to choose, because how do you deal with a lot of negativity, even around Africa, guys? A lot of negativity around Africa, for whatever reasons. Oh, it's a continent with lots of issues, and it's undeveloped, and there's a lot of poverty, and those kinds of things. So think about that in terms of the creativity that you need to put together to help a company bolster themselves in terms of awareness, but then also bolster themselves in terms of positive awareness, and to minimize the effects of negative publicity around the product or the service or the idea. Okay, so there we go, guys. You can see, okay, a chapter also therefore explores creativity in terms of systems and business models. Okay, and then of course don't forget, as we said, changing platforms, products, and consumption habits, and how they need to be creative in ways that go beyond simply the content or the products that they produce. Okay, so let's have a look. I like this quote by Einstein: creativity is contagious, so pass it on. So let's have a look at the role of creativity in the media. Okay, so creativity is central to all organizations, as you can see. A new idea is the first stage in all new organizational initiatives, whether involving products, processes, or procedures. Okay. Gosh, sometimes you never pick up these spelling mistakes until after that. Organizational over there, not organizational. Okay, organizational initiatives, whether involving products, procedures, or processes. Okay, so let's discuss those for a moment. Creativity. Let's have a look at well, actually, I want to throw it open to you guys. Okay, but I'm hoping that not only Ntabi Singh will answer, I'm hoping some other students will answer as well. But Ntabi Singh, please feel free to answer. Let's have a look at a company that came up with an innovative product or service or idea that required creativity. Who can think of an example? What do you guys think? What can you guys, as you're busy thinking, just feel to jump in if you can. How many of you guys have heard of the Shinkansen? Do you guys know what the Shinkansen is? It's a bit of a weird example, but anyway. Anybody know what the Shinkansen is? You're looking at Japanese concepts today. We're going to look at Ikigai just now. Okay, so the Shinkansen is another name for the bullet train, the Japanese bullet train. Okay, so if you have a look at the way Japan is structured and the way Japan is, you know, the way the lie of the land, there is a huge need for high-speed transport connections between Tokyo, which is the largest city in Japan, and Osaka, which is the second largest city in Japan. Now, mostly they're connected by plane, okay, and what they do is they people fly between Tokyo and Osaka. But what they did in the 1960s was Japan wanted to find other ways to connect these two cities aside from by road. So what they did was they invented a high-speed rail connection between Tokyo and Osaka, and it now goes even further down to other parts of Japan. But this was revolutionary in its day back in the 1960s. Revolutionary, the idea of having a high-speed train that didn't require an airplane or an airport, that was never going to be able to have issues with traffic because it's a train on a track. Okay, and by the time you have, because Tokyo has two airports, they have Haneda, which is in the bay, Tokyo Bay, near Yokohama, quite close by. And then they have Narita, which is the international airport that's quite far out of Tokyo. But obviously Tokyo has traffic issues. But so by the time you have booked, you have gone to Haneda for the traffic, gone to Haneda, gone through airport security, booked in, boarded the plane, flown to Osaka. In Osaka, excuse me, they usually land at Kansai. Kansai is an airport that's built out in the ocean, in the bay, because they didn't have the space. And the airport in the city itself was, people were complaining about the noise, so they built out in the airport. So now you got to get off the plane, go through your checks, go collect your baggage, jump on a car, and then travel from the island into the city of Osaka. So by the time, and the flight is about an hour, same as Joburg to Durban, it's about an hour flight. So now let's have a look. So by the time you have gotten into your car at your house, gone to the airport, and then flown to Osaka, and then gotten out of your car or into a car, into a taxi, and ended up at your hotel in Osaka, you're looking at least 3 hours, maybe even more, 4 hours. Okay, so the Shinkansen allows you to connect between Tokyo and Osaka for shorter period of time than what it would take you to fly, even though obviously it's by rail, and rail doesn't go as fast as plane, but those trains go really fast. That's what they're called, the bullet train, Shinkansen. The bullet train, they're 300, 400 kilometers an hour. So you could cover that distance in 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and you'd be in the other city. Okay, so think about the creativity, the innovation that was needed in order for them to even think about how you can create a train as a product, okay, that can compete with a plane as a product. Because think about, you can't do the same thing if you want to travel from Japan to Korea, because South Korea, because there's obviously water in the way, the Sea of Japan's in the way, or if you want to travel from Japan to Hawaii or travel from Japan to the United States because there's water in the way, unless they built a really long tunnel. But I don't think the technology is available yet because you're traveling through, stuff that's really, really deep under the ocean. Okay, so guys, think about the level of innovation and creativity that would have needed to go into even the idea of coming up with how are we going to solve the issue of transport between Japan's two largest cities. What are our options? Rail, road, air. What else can we do? Okay, so think about just how incredibly creative that was. Okay, and the knock-on effect of that is that they then picked it up in Europe, and Europe started getting these high-speed trains. They've got the TGV, part of the SNCF in France, and they've also got fast high-speed trains in Germany. And now the United States, 50 years later, is now starting to develop them. They're now looking at a high-speed rail connection between Houston and Dallas in Texas, between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and Los Angeles and San Diego in California, between New York and Washington on the East Coast. Okay, because they've seen how effectively they work in Japan and in Europe. So you can just imagine how clever that is. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever used the Gautrain in Joburg, Pretoria, which is more like a rapid rail system. It's Joburg's Metro. Think about how innovative that was to come up with the idea. They first started talking about Joburg having a subway system, an underground, a metro system in the 1960s. Okay, but it only opened in the 2010s. It opened in 2010. It took them 50 years to develop the system. Okay, so that's an example of a product. Okay, again, Coke, speaking about Coke coming up with Coke Zero or Coke Light for people who wanted to have the taste of Coke, but didn't want to have the calories. And I don't like those products. Aspartame and phenylalanine has been shown to cause cancer and other things. I don't like those, diet products. I don't know how healthy they are for you, but there's a demand for them, guys. So think about that in terms of products. Okay, then in terms of processes, let's have a look at processes. Processes where there's innovation. So let's have a look at some examples of processes that are innovative. Can you guys think of processes or procedures that are innovative? Does anything come to mind for you guys? Please feel free to jump in if you want to, and add to the discussion. Okay, so what I have is think about the way that we make cheese. You might say, Rob, that's such a weird example. It is, but think about the example of the way that we make cheese, so the process that we go through to make cheese. So cheese, in order for cheese to set and become cheese, so as you guys know, it's fermented milk. But in the old days, what they used to do is it needs rennet. So it needs a product called rennet, which is almost like a bacterial product, okay, that you need in order for the cheese to start to ferment to form cheese. That's why they have so many different cheeses in France, because these are different products. But in the old days, I'm talking about hundreds of years ago, how you made cheese is you'd put the milk into the cow's stomach, or into the stomach of the cow, which sounds awful because obviously you need to kill the animal. But that's how, and those bacterial processes in the stomach would curdle the milk and turn it into cheese. That's what they did. These days, we obviously don't use cow stomach anymore. Okay, we use bacterial processes that we grow in laboratories, and we use synthetic ingredients to break down, the milk so that it curdles and then becomes cheese. So guys, think about the creativity that went into that. Think about the creativity that goes into things like in the Second World War, for example. We see it now. Okay, so Russia and Ukraine are having this awful war. Okay, people are now saying we're not going to support Russian oil anymore. We're not going to support Russian gas anymore. Back in the 1940s, when it was Japan, after Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor, and they, of course, were invading China, what then happened was the Americans cut them off from rubber supplies and also from oil supplies. They had to find other ways. And then what happened was that Japan invaded Southeast Asia and captured the areas that produced natural rubber, all the, which are mostly in tropical areas of Southeast Asia and Indonesia. So the Americans did also not have then a supply of rubber. They couldn't get supplies of rubber. So what did they do? Necessity is the mother of invention. They fabricated rubber. So all the rubber that we see today on cars, okay, it's all synthetic rubber. It's not from the original rubber trees. We call it rubber, but actually it's synthetic. Think about something like all of the inventions that we have today. Many inventions came about because of necessity, especially you know, in the Second World War. Things like radar, which obviously is the thing that you can see aircraft and ships as they bounce off using the radar the radio waves. That was invented in the Second World War. Jet engines were invented in the Second World War because they wanted to have faster planes. And of course, today we still all fly with airplanes. So these are all examples of processes and procedures where you have this incredible creativity. So think in your brand, okay, and this is something that I wanted to discuss with you guys, but I don't want to belabor the point too much. And I know some of you guys are like, oh, Rob, I don't want to be on the spot and answer questions about this. But think about ways in which your brand has innovated. Now, maybe it might not be necessarily in terms of products. So like I said to you guys, Coke doesn't really have too many innovative products. I mean, it's been a long time since they put, you know, Coke Zero and Coke Light on the markets, you know, and they haven't spread into, they rather do different products. But we don't have like Coke with mint in it, which would be disgusting, you know, or Coke with, they do cherry Coke in America, they don't do it here, or Coke, other things. But like I said to you guys last week, I've been to the World of Coke in Atlanta, and you should see the range of products that Coke has produced all over the world. For example, there is a Coke drink, I think it's very popular in Mexico or somewhere in South America. It's actually bitter, but it's one of the best sellers in that country. It's fascinating. If you ever get to Atlanta, you have to go do a tour of CNN. That's where CNN is the head office, and go to the World of Coke. It is really, really good. It's amazing. So, guys, think about how Coke hasn't necessarily innovated its product, but think about its distribution strategy, which I'm going to speak to you about. The way that it distributes its product to all parts of the world. Like I said to you guys last week, there are only 3 countries in the world where they don't sell Coke: Myanmar, North Korea, and Cuba. That's the only 3 places where they don't sell Coke. Everywhere else in the world, you can buy Coke. Okay, so think about how they're able to, they've innovated their systems, innovated their processes, innovated their procedures to get it out there. So now take your brand, okay, and look at the creativity. I mean, think about the creativity around Barbie as an example, because I know it's a Tumi's example, but think about the creativity around Barbie. I would like to know the backstory. I don't know if any of you guys know, and if you do, please share with me. What is the backstory behind why they decided to make a Barbie movie? Was it an idea that some producer had on their mind? Did it somehow have a connection to the company that started Barbie? You know, and think about the innovation they put in place to get it to the screen and then to promote it around you know, the whole thing. Who came up with the whole idea of Barbenheimer, which is obviously, you know, merging Oppenheimer and Barbie? Was that by accident? Was that by design? I'm reminded of another example, the wonderful, ever wonderful Jerusalema from a couple of years ago, which was Master KG and Nomnebo. When that came around, and that was purely by fluke. There was this wonderful song, okay, and then a couple of dancers, I think it was in Angola, who turned it into a bit of like a dance thing. And then, of course, people around the world, because of the pandemic, said, well, you know, we can't be together, so let's do these dance moves and then upload them to YouTube. And it became this huge phenomenon. And it's probably the biggest song that's ever come out of South Africa, with 500 million views on YouTube. And because it was linked to a dance. Same thing with the Macarena, as an example. Same thing with Achy Breaky Heart, which is Billy Ray Cyrus from 30 years ago. Think about, and one of the key ingredients to that specific thing was the pandemic, and the whole idea that, you know, it had this took on this life of its own, this whole viral element to it. So what you guys need to keep in mind is, how can you include? So let's say, for example, now you are going to include an element, okay, and you decide to quote King, and you say, King states that creativity is central to all organizations. A new idea is the first stage in all new organizational initiatives, whether they involve products, processes, or procedures. Okay, so there is your theory. For example, it was very intelligent the way. And let's say now Tumi has now gone and done research, and she determines that the owners of Barbie decided it was time to do a movie about Barbie because it's such a phenomenon all around the world. And then they decided, okay, it's time to do a movie, and then we're going to use this to boost sales. Then how did they go about doing that? How did they go about using the movie as a sales boost? Or let's assume the opposite. Let's assume that Barbie didn't know about it, obviously didn't necessarily give their consent. They would need probably to have given permission, because Barbie is a brand, and they've now gone ahead and done this movie. And Barbie, the owners of Barbie have now picked up on this and said, how can we either create a movie Barbie, or how can we leverage this new interest in Barbie to boost our sales? So think about that, and think about the creativity involved in that, how they can leverage it to do. So guys, think about it. Creativity is even more important for media firms because they need an ongoing supply of great ideas. And this is where you come into it. So when you go into industry next year, or in the case of Ntabi Singh, it's lovely to have her in class because she is really working. Okay, think about it. When you go into industry next year and you have to sit around a table and brainstorm ideas, all these wonderful ideas that we look at, like for example, Chris said about Nike pairing up with Michael Jordan. That wasn't by accident. Somebody either sat down and suggested it, or somebody had a brainwave in the shower, or somewhere there was a connection that was made. Okay, so it was all part of the creative process. And you guys, as BBA graduates next year and integrated media management specialists, need to be able to go into firms and offer them your creativity in terms of ways to boost their brand, integrate better, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the quality of the content they generate influences their performance. Okay, because I remember watching a video a couple of years ago. They say the 4 key elements to a viral YouTube video are as follows. Number 1, it has to be about children or animals. If it's about children or animals, it will probably do really, really well on YouTube. Okay. Number 2, it has to be something that is really, 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 really good. So somebody who is phenomenal at something. So a really good athlete, or a really good dancer, or a really good slam poet, or whatever it is, somebody who and when people watch, they're like, wow, this is awesome, and they want to share it with friends and say, wow, this is phenomenal. Okay. The third element is something that is completely unique. Completely unique. So something that has never been seen or done before, something that is completely. So I'm reminded of a band that's not very well known. They had a video on YouTube. It was they're called OK Go, and they used the treadmills on this video, and it was unique. Nobody ever used treadmills in a music video before, and it was amazing. So what people did was they shared it, and it went viral. Okay, so it worked very, very well for them, and it really was effective for them. So that is as an example there. And then the fourth element, aside from those, so it needs to either have animals and children, it needs to be really, really phenomenal, it needs to be unique, or it needs to have a cute, oh, that's so sweet, and sort of tugs at the heartstrings, which can be related to kids. Usually in the case of animals and kids, it has that oh so sweet thing, and that is why people share it. So guys, if you were tasked with, if you were working in a media company, okay, or for an organization that said we've got no budget, how can we find creative ways to boost our sales? And I can also tell you, just to let you know, that Coke, a campaign where they had the names, people's names on the bottles. That was the reason why Coca-Cola put that campaign in place, is because they started, seeing a decrease in sales. Sales started to drop off and started to do quite badly. And the reason for that is because there's now a backlash against, sugary drinks. Governments are now saying we can't have people who are obese or people who've got diabetes. It places a strain on the health system of a country. Let's put a sugar tax in place. Let's educate people on the dangers of drinking too much carbonated sugary water. etc., etc. So how do companies manage to innovate and be creative to prevent a decline in sales in that respect? So Coke put together that, your name is on a Coke bottle, on a Coke can, because they saw sales drop off. And that actually bolstered sales again. People then started drinking it again because they wanted to buy, or they bought the product. I'm not saying they necessarily drank it, but they wanted to buy the product because they had those things over there. Okay, so guys, content creation is central, and it's the fundamental activity for the media sector. And the requirement for creativity is constant. Okay, so you constantly need to be being creative. And this is very, very, very time consuming and very, very draining, because that's one of the elements of marketing. You have to constantly be creative and come up with new ideas the whole time. So some companies like Coke did very, very well. Some companies possibly not so well. Okay, moving along. From an economic perspective, creativity is a critical strategic resource because of the nature of cultural goods. Okay, so guys, customer demand is fickle. There is an incessant need for novelty, the quality of being new, original, or unusual, as I mentioned to you previously. Okay, so some companies don't necessarily have, I mean, one of my students always saying to me, oh, Rob, our company does not have a decent marketing department. It's basically me. And I said, well, why don't you go to them and make suggestions, as to what they can do to, give you a pay increase, and to, make you, the head of marketing, whatever it is, and, go make suggestions. And sometimes, guys, remember, the stuff. It becomes, again, the Dunning-Kruger effect. The stuff. It becomes self-evident to you. It becomes almost, secondary nature to you, something that you are able to do very effectively. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go into a company that is not going to have that thing. And there are some companies, okay, which don't know the first thing about marketing. They are completely clueless. And if you had a company that required you to, to help them from scratch, if they literally came to you and said to you, listen, I know nothing, help me from the beginning, would you be able to put together everything for them, from a logo to a strap line to a complete strategy that included integrated media management, and advise them on how they'd be able to boost their company? Because remember, if you can do this, as I said to you guys before, you'll always have a job. People will pay you good money because you're solving a problem for them. Okay, and that's how you can then, when you continue solving problems for people, the more problems of people that you solve, okay, the more you'll be paid. So that is why Elon Musk, for example, is they want to have cars, and especially in a country like the United States, they want to have cars that are electrical, or electric cars, because they're cheaper than having petrol-driven cars, and also it's better for the environment, and etc. And also they look nice, and they're creative, and they're they're innovative, and they look cool, and they're they people are attracted to them, etc., etc. So, and millions and millions of cars are sold, and that's why he is so wealthy. Think about it as well with Twitter, which, as I said to you, I think the whole X thing is a mistake, but he might be able to put out a rabbit out of the hat, because he's certainly done it in the past. But let's see what unfolds. But the whole idea of constantly being new, original, or unusual, and think about specific people that you can even use. Let's say you were going to use this as a source in your assignment. Okay, so think about somebody who is very creative, who is then used as a way to bolster a brand. And I'm going to give you an example that I shared with you last week as well. Back in the 80s, when Pepsi was trying very hard to unseat Coke as the #1 brand in terms of soft drink, okay, they decided to run 2 campaigns. The first campaign, and they said, okay, who is the biggest in the world in music right now? Okay, and you can argue the pros and cons, but arguably the two biggest musicians in the world in the 1980s were Michael Jackson and Madonna. Michael Jackson has still got the best-selling album of all time, Thriller, 100 million copies sold. Nobody will ever come close because now we don't buy albums anymore. We all do downloads and streaming and that kind of thing. And Madonna was, you know, she revolutionized, you know, sort of women's lib, and she had a certain look. I mean, she is iconically 80s. Okay, so what they did was they got Michael Jackson to do a series of, you know, concerts and some video, etc., which included Pepsi, the promotion of Pepsi, and that was when his hair caught on fire. I remember he had an incident where he was doing a concert and his hair caught on fire, and of course he was quite badly scarred and had to go for plastic surgery and reconstructive surgery and that kind of thing. So that backfired on Pepsi. It was very negative publicity for them. And then, of course, Madonna, that they paid her money to do the same thing. And then she released at the end of the decade, 1989, she released Like a Prayer, which of course was burning crosses and, you know, a woman who was, you know, had a baby outside of marriage, and it was very sort of a sinner saint, anti the Catholic Church and that kind of thing, and it was lambasted. They loathed Madonna. She had all her fans, and she had her critics, and her critics, you know, were saying, how could Pepsi, you know, connect themselves to this thing? And they've made and it was a huge PR nightmare. But think about the strategic thinking that went into the whole process. How do we connect Pepsi to two creators in the 1980s who are at the top of their game? And how do we, again, use the psychological concept of transference to transfer the positive associations with Michael Jackson and Madonna across from there to the Pepsi brand, and how effectively that could have worked. Now, in this case, it didn't really work all that effectively. Let's think of another example, okay? Think about Harry and Meghan. Okay, so there is Oprah speaking to Meghan, and Meghan saying, well, and the royal family, we spoke about this at the beginning of the year as well, royal family is a massive brand, and she's saying the royal family is racist, they were horrible to me, they were nasty to my husband. And there's Oprah, and she's, you know, eating this up and saying how awful and how terrible. And then it's discovered later on that, you know, Meghan has lied, and that there is no evidence to suggest, there's some evidence to suggest there may be, but she can't prove it, and so on and so forth. And Oprah ends up with egg on her face, and it's damaged her brand and made her look bad. Okay, and then, of course, now she's distanced herself and disassociated herself from them. But think about if it had been good. Oprah initially latched onto Harry and Meghan because they were topical. They were top of mind. People were talking about them. They were all the rage. They were talk of the town. So Oprah said, let me interview them, because that's where I stay relevant and I can make my brand pop up. And so, guys, think about, and it doesn't always work. You can see there are lots of examples where people have done creative things and they've backfired. Like I said to you, I don't know, maybe you guys would know better than me, if there's been any backlash around the very whiteness of Barbie, because obviously it's very white. You know, Barbie is white and Ken is white and the whole show is white. And it's very pink and white. And I don't know if people have said anything about it. I don't know. I honestly don't know. You might say, okay, but Rob, let's have a look at Wakanda. You know, I mean, Wakanda is completely black. So, you know, is that like the knock-on effect? Well, Wakanda could never be white. It has to be black, you know, as an example. So, or, you know, like Black Panther, that kind of thing. So I don't know. You guys can draw your own conclusions and tell me what you guys think. But these are some of the things, and kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But you need to be very careful the way you proceed these days when it comes to these things. Okay, so strategically, guys, the higher the levels of product creativity, the higher the media firm's ability to satisfy the customer need, and the greater the potential for market success and competitive advantage. So now remember what I said to you guys at the beginning of the year in terms of creative, sustainable competitive advantage, okay, is one of the key elements to branding. Sustainable competitive advantage. How do you sustain a competitive advantage? If you're Apple, one of the ways that you do this is you innovate the whole time and you're creative. Like Onalena said to us that day in class, when we had the class, she said, they've got features in, you know, the iPhone that I didn't even know that I needed until I started needing them. I mean, I'm not a particular fan, but I will, as I said to you guys before, I will grant you this. Apple takes very, very nice photographs and very good video. So it's the kind of video you can use a phone for, you know, and then you can create music video or video content for YouTube. So it's definitely, you know, for creators, you know, Apple's created a very, very good product. Okay, so in the case of Apple, their sustainable competitive advantage is creativity and innovation. In the case of Coke, their sustainable competitive advantage is an extremely good marketing strategy that includes very, very good distribution. In the case of price, I mentioned this to you guys before as well, price, guys, is not necessarily always strategically sustainable in terms of competitive advantage. So it's not good for the brand. So that is why an airline that continues to undercut and offer cheaper tickets won't necessarily have the biggest market share, because eventually what they'll do is they'll offer the prices so low that they can no longer then afford to operate. And they have to then push their prices up, which means that people will switch. That's why if you look at the whole concept of brand loyalty or not loyalty, price is not a sustainable competitive advantage. People won't necessarily allow you, you know, follow your brand because you have lower prices. Okay, but where you have the ability to satisfy customer needs, and when you do, you know, you have your competitive advantage in this respect, it can be very, very successful. And now what you need to do is ask yourself the question, are you, as the media firm that's either a part of the company, you're the division of the company, or you are the company itself, are you, as a media firm, creating sustainable competitive advantage because you are being creative? Or are you, as the media firm, able to latch onto a company's creativity in terms of creating the sustainable competitive advantage, and in so doing market that for them, tell people about that for them, and that's how you boost your sales? Okay, so guys, think about it. Media companies can also be companies. They can also be brands. Think of Time Warner, think of AOL, think of Clear Channel in the United States, think of the SABC, think of Mnet, think of DSTV, think of MultiChoice. These are all examples of media brands. Think of 947, think of MediaMark, which you had to do your assignment on, assignment number 2, F2, about that. Think about, you know, the how even that can be an example of a company that is you know, a company that's a media company that is also a brand. Okay, so guys, creativity can be seen as a strategic organizational resource. And guys, this is very dry theory. This is from King. You might say, oh, Rob, this is so boring. I know that it is. Unfortunately, we need to go through it so you can get the academic background that you can use then for your assignment. Okay, that's really, really important. Okay, so let's see what then is next. Okay, creativity is deeply embedded in many routines and roles. Okay, so creativity is so much part of the DNA of everyday activities within the media sector. Think about it, guys. All of you who are doing the BBA are all very creative. There is not a single person, and all human beings are creative in some way. I know some, and we're going to discuss it later on in today's class. Okay, creativity is not limited to just people who are in, you know, the creative industry. So writing, music, media, whatever it is. An accountant can be creative. As a matter of fact, many accountants are creative because the accountants know how to cook books. I'm not saying that it makes it right, but they're able to hide, you know, financial mismanagement. Think about how many people have been caught out, gone to jail, etc., because they've cooked the books. So accountancy can be very creative. Somebody who is working, you know, in a company where they manufacture things, like they manufacture cars. Okay, you're working for Toyota. There are ways to be creative there. Think about the whole concept of how we got robotics in place, and the auto line where we are producing things, the industrial line where we're getting car parts manufactured at the same time so we can make lots of cars together. That's a form of innovation. When it first came out, and they said we're creating a production line, an assembly line for a car, because Henry Ford was, I think, the first person that Ford was, you know, big in that respect. And they took that and they said, how are we going to be able to create cars more effectively and produce more cars in less time and streamline processes? Let's come up with an assembly line. And then the Japanese, back in the 80s, took this and they took it to the new level. That's why the Japanese have produced so many very good cars. Toyota and Lexus being at the top of the pile. The Germans as well. Think about the Germans. Germany is very well known for its top-notch brands, BMW, Mercedes, especially those two. Porsche is also German. Okay, so how they've used innovation and creativity to do something as mundane as increase productivity in terms of an assembly line. Okay, so, but especially in the media industry, guys, creativity is very, very much part of the DNA of media companies. And the need for creativity extends further than coming up with the original idea, decisions concerning how to develop the product. Okay, so think about it. You're sitting down together and you're deciding what can we do to develop products even further. How are we going to, I mean, like I said to you guys last week, okay, 20 years ago, when the iPod was very big, it was used, they even wrote books about it, okay, the iPod. Why do we not have an iPod today? Because anybody and everybody listens to music through their phone. They don't need why do you need a separate device to download tracks onto it? Now what you do is instead of downloading tracks, you now stream the tracks using an online medium, okay, is whatever it is. If I want to listen to music, and I don't listen to a huge amount of music, but if I do listen to music, I'll play the YouTube video. That's what I do if I want to listen to a piece of music. And I'll go into YouTube and I'll search for it, and then I'll watch the YouTube video, let it play in the background or whatever, and you can find playlists, etc., etc., etc. So some people use Spotify, some people use Apple Music, whatever it is, but there is no more need for an MP3 player. It's become defunct. Why? Because they put it into the phone. There's no more need for you to run around. I can tell you now, when digital media became a huge thing, we no longer needed film. Okay, companies like Kodak absolutely caved because you no longer, at Eastman Kodak, you no longer needed to develop film. The film development industry, where you're developing film like in the old days, you'd take your roll of film to a development place and they would print out the pictures for you and you go and collect them after a couple of days, or like 1 hour photo, they would do them in an hour, you'd have your pictures. That is dead. That industry no longer exists, guys, because nobody ever does, and nobody ever develops photographs like that. You can now, if you want to print the photographs, you can, okay, but that is a small sideline industry now. Same thing with cameras. When was the last time any of you went, unless you're a professional photographer, when is the last time anybody went and bought a professional camera? Everybody uses their phone. Same thing with a video camera. When was the last time anybody went and bought a video camera? Everybody uses their phone. Okay, so the whole idea, when was the last time you actually logged onto a desktop? I mean, when Chris does his lectures and you can hear him typing, clack, 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 you can hear he's got a keyboard that's attached to a desktop computer in his office at Boston, okay? I haven't used a desktop computer, gosh, probably in 15 years was the last time I had a desktop computer. I haven't used it for years and years because we all use laptops or you use devices. Okay, so think about that, guys, how these things have all changed. The whole idea of being able to connect to the internet. When phones first came out, like I said to you guys last week, 25 years ago, sort of mid-90s, nobody would ever have dreamed that they were going to create a phone where you could listen to music, take photographs, take video, and surf the internet. The internet in and of itself was only a concept that came to the fore in 1990 with the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. So think about that, guys. Think about how much the world has changed and how media has often been at the forefront of these things. Okay, so decisions concerning how to develop the product, exploiting technological features, which we've now discussed a lot, finding the right price. Price can also be innovation, it can be, recruiting the right talent, and then promoting the product to the industry and to the consumers. Okay, so those are all areas where you need to be creative. Moving along, the need for creativity in all firms is more severe when environments become more turbulent, especially when that turbulence involves emerging technologies. So guys, think about that really, really carefully as well. The more uncertainty we have in the world and the more things are up in the air and there's strife and there's difficulty, the more creative we need to be, because creativity then fuels innovation. So think about, again, I'm drawn to the Russia-Ukraine war. I have been watching lots of YouTube videos on the way Russians are finding ways around the fact they've been banned from the SWIFT system. MasterCard and Visa doesn't work in Russia. They can't. Boeing and Airbus won't supply parts to for their aircraft. So they've actually had to steal parts from there. What they do is they ground a couple of aircraft, take those parts and use them as spare parts for the aircraft that have not been grounded. But they've also said, well, now we need to start rebuilding our own planes. We can't rely on Boeing and Airbus anymore. We have to build our own planes. Okay, but think about how turbulent environments force and innovate creativity and force and innovate change. What Russians are also saying is, well, how can we work around the fact that there is no McDonald's? How can we work around the, I mean, I've heard Vladimir Putin has now just banned VPN. So it makes it very difficult for you to surf the net and find certain, websites. But the Russians will find a way around it, because they always do. And that's why sanctions can be effective, but they're not fail-proof or foolproof and fail-safe, because people find ways around it. They find ways to be creative, because where there is demand, there is also supply. Think about the drug trade as an example. And as deplorable as the drug trade is, and as deplorable as people being addicted to drugs is, the truth of the matter is that it will always be very difficult to get rid of the drug trade. I'm not saying that means we shouldn't try. We should continue to try to get rid of drugs, but there will always be a demand for it, because people want to, escape their troubles in the world, and so they want to, take mood-altering and mind-altering substances that will make them feel better about their lives. And that is the human condition. So, and think about the creative ways in which people, are able to sneak drugs through airports and through security and over borders and that kind of things. And excuse me, what it requires is that the police become very creative in the way that they tackle drug dealers and they tackle drug-related issues. Also, a fascinatingly interesting a topic of conversation and an area of inquiry. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of why turbulent environments create so much innovation and change. Okay, so while creativity has always been important in media industries, technological change has both underlined the strategic centrality of creativity for the sector and expanded the scope within organizations where creativity is required. Okay, so that's a mouthful. Let's go through that again and discuss it again. Okay, so creativity is important in media industries, but technological change has underlined the strategic centrality of creativity. Okay, so what we're saying here, guys, is that, but I would take it beyond only technology. Kuhn is obviously very focused on technology, but I want you guys to think beyond technology. I want you to think to PESTLE. It's not just technology. Okay, how does technology have an effect on social? I mean, I know there's a lady that I know, her name's Dr. Milena Kruger, very smart woman. She is convinced that we are all addicted to devices. And she says, we've often had conversations, she says, Rob, it's unhealthy for human beings. We are far too addicted to devices. They deprive us of sleep. They make us antisocial. People start doing crazy things. I mean, I even saw a report the other day. Some young American, I think he was like 17 or 18 years old, and he was flirting with a girl, and some inappropriate pictures got sent, because he was flirting with her, and then she blackmailed him, and he actually committed suicide, and now she's being held responsible for his death because the fact that she was using it against him, and that kind of thing. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that you would ever have had happen 100 years ago when you were sending letters to each other, and there were no, let's call it 150 years ago, and there were no photographs to exchange. That would never have happened. So what I want to, now that is a social effect of a technological change. So technology has affected things socially. Think about what happened during the pandemic. The pandemic obviously was a massive social thing, okay, an environmental, because people were making each other sick, because of the virus. So government, and then we see the politics. Politicians stepped in and said, okay, we need to close borders, we need to stop flights, we need to stop transport, we need to stop travel, stop people connecting to other areas, got to wear a mask. Think about the huge effect of the mask industry. People then who, and I know there are conspiracy theorists to say, yes, it's BlackRock and it's this one, and it's, what are the Illuminati and so on and so forth, and they are all, behind the whole thing. So if we want to sell more weapons, we need to create a war. And if we want to have a pandemic so we can sell medical supplies and masks and sell medications and vaccines, and that's why it all is. Okay, if you believe in conspiracy theories, I'm not going to stop you. I know one of the students, I think it was Dennis, who once said in the class, he said in the class, oh yeah, that, what's it called? What is that thing called, man, that we did? Fly Safi. They're 50, what's it, 9 rand sale? Was it 50 rand sale, whatever it was? That cheap 1 rand, or 1 rand sale, whatever it was. Dennis, I remember saying in class, oh no, Rob, it's a scam. Lena was sitting online all day waiting for her, for her, her 1 rand flight, and Dennis like, oh, it's a scam. This is the marketing scam. So think about it, guys. Think about how these things, and the way that it can affect our social interactions as human beings, how technology can be used, in a good or a bad way. Think about climate change at the moment. How is climate change affecting the way companies are responding to climate change, and how they are having to innovate and be creative? Let's have a look at one example. Sea level rises. What they're saying is because we have, these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, that's leading to the polar ice caps melting, that's leading to an increase in sea levels. So what's happening is now we need to put barriers in place. We need to protect low-lying cities like Seoul and New York and Tokyo and Bangkok and Jakarta and even here Durban and Cape Town. How do we protect them? Think about the effects of environmental change on social interactions. People at the moment, because it's summer in the Northern Hemisphere, have all been dying of exhaustion, heat exhaustion, and a lack of water. In some cases, people have drunk too much water and died from that. So think about, and how does this affect your ability to offer people products and services to deal with these issues? Are we going to see an increase in the sale of hats? Because the sun is becoming stronger. Are we going to see an increase in the sale of sunscreen? Are we going to see an increase in the sale of bottled water? Water itself, potable, drinkable water, is a precious, rare, scarce resource. Think about how people can take that and turn it into, something that they can sell and also manipulate countries. I mean, if you look at from a political perspective, just to give you guys some perspective. Okay, Egypt and Sudan were very, very upset with Ethiopia when they built the Grand Renaissance Dam, because they said, listen, you are stopping flowing water from the Blue and White Nile coming, especially the Blue Nile with Ethiopia, coming down through Ethiopia, down through Sudan, down through Egypt. I mean, Khartoum, which is the capital and largest city of Sudan, is at the confluence of the Blue and White Nile. Cairo is still the largest city in Africa, is along the Nile, just before the Nile Delta then starts to fan out and move towards the coast, okay, at the Mediterranean. That had enormous political implications and consequences, because if Ethiopia blocks off the flow of water down the river, okay, that prevents people from having water to drink, also prevents people from having irrigation so that they can farm, so we can grow food. So you can see the political implications of that social move, okay, of the technology of building them. Look at the way the Russian-Ukrainian grain deal, when that ended, okay, is now affecting food supplies to other parts of the world. Africa is saying, listen, if we don't get grain from Ukraine, it affects our food security and pushes up our prices. That has an economic effect. So guys, think about how, when you put together your strategy and you're looking at how these things all tie to each other, ask yourself the question, how is this all important? How can this all be put together in my presentation? Okay, so the need for creativity and extend the scope within organizations where creativity is required. That is what's happened because of technological change. Media firms must not only be creative with their products, but also their business models, the design of their organizations, and the roles within it. Okay, so let's move along. Okay, researching creativity. Strategy theorists agree on the importance of creativity to organizations, but surprisingly little attention has been devoted to increasing the understanding of its origins and influences. Okay, guys, this is, we're just covering stuff in the textbooks. This is not really all that important. From the 1950s onwards, just to give you some background and some perspective, the 1950s onwards, investigations into the nature and causes of creativity took place, but not within the context of the media industry. Between 1950 and 1980, there were two clear strands in the work, focused on investigations on the creative individual and then focusing on the creative process. Okay, so let's have a look then at these two specific things. Number one is the creative individual. The assumption was that creativity was more or less determined at birth. Okay, and that a few exceptional individuals are born creative. This approach then looked at outstandingly creative individuals in the fields of arts and science. They analyzed autobiographies, letters, journals, and so on and so forth. And that it sought to identify the cognitive processes and personality traits that might be predictive of creative performance. So guys, I don't know about you. I don't think that creativity is something that is innate. I think creativity is something that's developed. I did a course a couple of years ago with like a life coach kind of person who said simply, give yourself permission to be creative. Anybody and everybody is already creative. If you're human, that means you have creativity in you. Think about when you lie. Okay, and I'm not trying to promote that you lie, but think about lying, guys. Lying is a perfect example of being creative. You need to come up with a story that's not true. Okay, so let's say, for example, you snuck a cigarette and your parents don't know that you smoke, and your mom said, listen, you smell like a cigarette, what happened? Oh no, I was hanging out with friends, mom, and my friends all smoke and I just happened to be there and secondary smoke, so secondary smoke. Oh, okay, that's a lie. But it also required creative thinking, otherwise how are we going to get stuff out of the lie? So everybody's creative, guys. There is no such thing as a creative individual. People aren't born creative. Some people may have a penchant for more creativity than others because they come from creative environments. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are born with creativity. Okay, so that's the first thing. So Kussler, who's a researcher, found that rather than being a random process, creativity results from the deliberate connection of two previously unconnected matrices of thought. Think about it, guys. Where do you specifically have your most creative ideas? Think about the choices that you're making for your assignments. So far, Michelle has said Walt Disney. Okay. Chris has come up with Air Jordan for his. I've obviously done Coke. Tumi is doing Pandora. Mobile is doing Pepcore. Tubby saying, I can't remember if you've mentioned what you were going to do. I'm not sure if you had. But anyway, so guys, you can think about the creative process. You started thinking about it and mulling it over in your head, thinking about what you were going to do, how you were going to do it, what you're going to add in. That's all creative processes, guys, because two previously unconnected matrices of thought that came together. The assignment and how you're going to do the assignment and what brand you're going to choose to do the assignment on. Okay, so research then shifted to the wider personality of creative individuals. That is to those of traits that are characteristic of creative persons, and an approach rooted in psychometric testing. So that's not really all that important, but what are the patterns and the traits that are characteristic of creative persons? But I'm telling you now, guys, even though this is theoretical, everybody is creative. Now let's have a look at the creative process. Okay, so what creative processes do we see in creative individuals, which concentrates on the characteristics processes that lead to creative outcomes, and this has now become dominant in the approach to the field. So it's not so much about who is a creative individual, but how is everybody engaging in the creative process. Okay, so let's have a look. This concentrates then on the characteristics of processes that lead to creative outcomes. Oh, sorry, that's a repetition, guys. My apologies. Okay, I didn't see that. Sorry, I repeated the slide. Just ignore that one. My apologies. Okay, the focus of on the influence of the work, setting on creativity. Okay, so how does the work situation require us to be creative? A new research strand emerged, interactionist and social constructivist. So let's have a look at this over here. See, somebody sent me a message, guys. Let me see if there's messages. So I'm just quickly checking, see if there are messages. I might have missed one. I think these are the ones from Chris. Oh, that's Michelle. Okay, I think it was Chris early on. Okay, cool. Okay, Beverly, aka Lindiwe. Okay, okay, cool. Okay, cool. Thanks, Lindiwe. Appreciate the information. Thanks so much. Cool. Thanks for the cool. Awesome. Okay, great. And this, sorry, I just want to check. Bonolo sent me a message earlier on. Let me see. Bonolo. Okay. Bonolo. Okay, cool. I'll get back to you. Okay, Bonolo's not in class today. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. I'll get back to Bonolo. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. For those of you still here. Okay. All right, guys. So, okay, so interactionist and social constructivist approaches. Okay, which look at how social influences and cultural factors influence creativity. So guys, think about it. Research, creativity can either come about because you're interacting with people. And I remember I did a creativity exercise with a company a number of years ago. All I gave them was a paperclip. I said, guys, here's a paperclip. Now design for me an animal. And they had to create an animal from the paperclip. I said, okay, now, you know, do something, take the paperclip and make something creative with a paperclip that's not a paperclip. And they wanted to come up with different ways of, so, oh, look, I've made an earring out of the paperclip. Oh, look, I've made a hair clip out of the paperclip, those kind of things. And look, they had a paperclip. So it'd be amazing what you can do if you put into a creative environment. And this is what happens very effectively in advertising agencies. They sit down around a conference table and they creatively discuss ideas. And no idea is too stupid. No idea is too zany or wacky. You discuss all the ideas and come up with great ideas together. Okay, so interacting with people can lead to, you know, an increase in creativity. In some cases, what people say is, okay, a social constructivist outlook. So in other words, you are in social situations, and because you are a social person and you are a social human being, you are automatically constructing through your being a human being, through your being somebody who's in social settings, you are constructing out of this some form of creativity. So it's similar, but what you're saying is you are living in creative environments, and that is causing an increase in creativity. Okay, so guys, cognitive skills, personality traits, and process issues are still part of the picture, but it's now part of the larger framework. So does natural talent help? Is natural talent part of the equation? I would say yes, it is. Natural talent is part of the equation, but everybody has natural talent, guys. All human beings are naturally talented. I remember a guy I worked with a number of years ago who said, talent is universal. Everybody has talent. What separates people who do from people who don't is action, is work, is, you know, applying their creativity, applying the talent. So everybody has talent, and that's what you need to keep in mind when you are doing these things. Okay, so personality traits. It's generally regarded as somebody who does arts. If you're a dancer, or, you know, a musician, or if you are a painter, if you're an artist, or whatever it is, you're more creative. I don't think that's true either. You can argue that there's left brain creativity and right brain creativity, and then of course there is creativity between the two hemispheres, linked by the corpus callosum. Okay, so the corpus callosum, some research shows that the corpus callosum is most active when creativity comes from both left and right brain. Okay, so never limit yourself in terms of what you consider to be a creative skill. Some of the best and most creative ideas have come from people who are not in the marketing field, who are not in the media field. They come with really, really, really good ideas, and they're not even in the field. And then people have picked up on them and taken them from there. Okay, great. Let's have a look at what's next. Okay, so guys, what I wanted to do now is, and this will be for the next half an hour or so, and then we're going to be finishing the class at about 10 to 5, a little bit early, but that will give you an opportunity then to be on your way. So we're going to be busy. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you're not too bored, that you've learned something today. Okay, let's have a look then. So this diagram is not very, very clear. The 3 components of creativity, this is what one of the models suggests. Creativity is linked to expertise, motivation, and creative thinking skills. So where this is a Venn diagram, where expertise and creative thinking skills and motivation all come together, we have the core of creativity. So let's start on the top left-hand side, then move to the right, and then move down to the bottom. Okay, so expertise is, in a word, knowledge, technical, procedural, and intellectual knowledge. So you guys sitting in this class learning about integrated media management, you have expertise. You guys as fourth year BBA students who are now attending lectures, and you guys are finishing your degree, you have expertise that you're now going to be taking into industry. Okay, for those of you who are already in industry, that experience you built up over time, that is expertise, which has allowed you to be creative, to come up with creative ideas. Okay, so that is really, really awesome as well. Okay, so guys, think about that and think about how that has influenced you and influenced the way that you do things. Okay, creative thinking skills. Creative thinking skills determine how flexibly and imaginatively people approach problems. Do their solutions upend the status quo? Do they persevere through dry spells? So I have had some exposure to a chap. I actually attended one of his lectures. His name's Stephen Pressfield. He wrote a book called The War of Art, not The Art of War. Sun Tzu wrote a book called The Art of War. He flipped the thingies around and called The War of Art. And he said, creativity is sitting down every day and doing work. Stephen King, who's done some very creative stuff, as you guys know, I'm sure you guys have heard of Stephen King. Okay, Stephen King says, I write a little bit every day, even if it's rubbish. I write every single day. Stevie Wonder said he used to write a song every single day. I write a song, even if it's rubbish, I write a song every single day. Okay, and John Williams has created some incredible music, including the Star Wars theme, has echoed the sentiment and said, inspiration is 99% perspiration. You sit down and do it. And I'll give you the perfect example. I think I've mentioned this before. Back in 1993, when he had to create the soundtrack for Schindler's List, he watched the movie, found it very disturbing because obviously it's about the Holocaust, and said to Steven Spielberg, I can't do this thingy because I need to be a master. I need to be a creative master. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm not one. And Steven Spielberg said to him, yes, I know they're all dead, but unfortunately, you know, the task falls to you because nobody else is alive. So go and create. And he did. He came up with the theme for Schindler's List, which is the most hauntingly beautiful piece of music. It is a phenomenal theme that you can hear the wailing of the violin, which is a very Jewish thing. You know, it's very and so it really is so fitting. And he has said it's not about being kissed by the muse and, oh, I feel so inspired. It's about sitting down to do the work. And then when you sit down to do the work, you then find that you are then kissed by the muse, and you find that these creative things come to the fore. So guys, don't be fooled into believing that you're either creative or you're not. Think about your own creativity around the products or service or idea that you're going to do in your brand, and think about the creative ways that you're going to have to include the academics. You know, doing the academic focus on the assignment requires requires you to be creative. Okay, then let's have a look at motivation. Not all motivation is created equal at the bottom. An inner passion to solve the problem at hand leads to solutions far more creative than do external rewards, such as money. This component, called intrinsic motivation, is the one that can be most immediately influenced by the work environment. So guys, this is the point, and we're going to discuss this in a bit more detail in a minute or two. What really drives you? You know, money is a good thing. We all need money to survive, but what really drives you? What gets you out of bed in the morning and you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it? That's what Oprah said. Oprah said you found your passion if you're prepared to do something without any monetary compensation. That's what and now sometimes you can't necessarily get paid for it, and you need to have a day job, in inverted commas, to earn money. But think about what really inspires you to get out of bed in the morning. Is it being a mother? Is it being a father? Is it being a writer? Is it being an entrepreneur? What is it? Is it your job? In some cases, you are one of those very rare, lucky, fortunate individuals who has a great job that you enjoy and also is your passion. And I say the word passion in inverted commas because passion actually means suffering. Il passiere, to suffer. Okay, so the passion, but you will suffer for your craft. You will suffer for that which you love. Okay, so think about it over there. So when these three elements come together, expertise and creative thinking and motivation, that is when you are at your most creative. So we're going to continue discussing these creativity models. Okay, let's have a look at this over here. So this is now the creative process. I'm sorry, these slides, the quality is not all that good. I couldn't find decent high-res images, but okay, let's have a look. The creative process, you can see this specific model suggests that there are 4 elements of the creative process: illumination, preparation, verification, and incubation. Okay, so illumination is seeing the solution. So you think about it and 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 think about it, and then the solution comes to you. Okay, preparation, which is probably the one that begins first. Okay, and think about, guys, how this relates to your research assignments. Okay, preparation, gathering information. You're putting together information, you're starting to gather information for your assignment, gather information. Think about when you go on a date with somebody, if you guys are not, married or, dating theaters. Gathering information about the person you want to go on the date with. Is it going to be a fit? Am I physically attracted to the person? Are they the kind of person I think I want to have a good time with? Do they love animals? Do they love, white bread and cheese? Whatever, what it's going to be. So think about gathering information. Okay. Then you can argue, and you can argue that this, I think they all work independently of each other. You can argue that this specific creative process starts in the top right-hand quadrant. So if you like a clock, you're starting at 12 o'clock and then you're moving to the right first. Okay, so starts preparation, moves to incubation, moves to verification, moves to illumination. I don't see it like that. I think they can all be independent of each other. Sometimes the solution comes before the incubation. Sometimes the solution only comes after incubation. Sometimes you have the solution and then you incubate and you come up with a new, better solution or not as good of a solution, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so incubation, setting the problem aside. Sometimes the answer doesn't come immediately. You sit there and think about it. You can't think, and it's difficult. You don't know what's going on, and it's challenging. And then after a couple of days, after you've put it aside and you come back with fresh eyes and a fresh brain, oh, suddenly there it pops into your head. Okay, verification, refining the idea. Sometimes, guys, gathering information and verifying that information that allows you to refine the idea will then influence the incubation and the illumination. Okay, so it's not necessarily that all these factors will necessarily work in some sort of order. Sometimes the solution is immediate. Think about an example where you are in a car, and I don't know who of you drive, or let's say, for example, you're on your bike or you're walking across the road. You see a car hurtling towards you down the road, a truck that's lost its brakes. Okay. You are not going to have time to gather information, set the problem aside, verify by refining the idea, and then see the solution. You're going to jump out the way of the car instantly. Okay, so not all situations require you to go through this process, but it is a helpful guideline when it comes to the creative process. Okay, let's have a look over here. This specific goodie over here, a diagram and a model, okay, suggests that there are different types of creativity, something that I really and truly love. So I hope that you guys will, benefit from this and really get a sense of what is good over here. So this suggests that there are different types of creativity: imaginative creativity, inquisitive creativity, persistent creativity, collaborative creativity, and disciplined creativity. Okay, so let's start in the top left-hand corner with imaginative, and then move around. Also, again, clockwise from right, to the right. Okay, so guys, imaginative creativity. You coming up with an idea for a movie script that you want to sell to Hollywood. Okay, so you use your intuition, you make connections with people, you make connections with ideas, you think about what you want to say. I mean, how did people, let me give you another example. There's a movie that I watched not too long ago. It's called Alone in Berlin, not the kind of movie you guys would necessarily like. I like these, these cinema nouveau type movies. Also, again, it's a historical drama. It's about a husband and wife who lived in Berlin in the Second World War. Their son was killed on the front in France. And because they were so disillusioned with the fact that Hitler had allowed their son to die, they started filling out postcards with negative messages. Hitler is a murderer. Hitler, mother's done it. Hitler, take your son. Don't believe the messages of the Third Reich. Don't believe the messages of the Fuhrer. He doesn't care about your children. They're just cannon fodder, etc. And they placed these strategically in public places all over Berlin in the 1940s. So train stations, public areas, on steps, near lifts, these kind of things. Anyway, they did this for about 2 years, and they got caught. They got prosecuted. They got sent on trial. They got prosecuted by the Nazi regime, and then they were found guilty, and they were actually guillotined. They chopped their heads off with guillotine back in those days. Okay, but now, who would have sat down to write a book about this incident? And that book was then turned into a script where they changed details for dramatic purposes, and then turned it into a very, very good movie. Okay, so think about the way they made the connections between people, etc. And what they did then is they used it at the end of the day, and this is dramatic license, the policeman who actually put all the pieces of the puzzle together and determined that they were who they were and where they lived. At the end then, what he does is he takes all the postcards he's collected, throws them out the window so people can read them, and then shoots himself in the head. Now, that is not true. That wasn't part of the thing. He didn't do that, to my knowledge. I don't think he committed suicide. That's dramatic license. But how would you make those connections, use the intuition, and then play with various possibilities to come up with a script? How would you do that for your assignment? How would you do that in a media company? How would you do that for a new product or service that you are doing? How would you do that in a relationship that you're going to have with somebody? How can you be? I mean, we all do it. Okay, you see something that you like, or you're with somebody that you like, but you see something you like, and you think, "Ooh, I wonder how if we went on a date together, we went and had coffee, how would that turn out? How would things happen? I wonder." So you start imagining things. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Inquisitive. Okay, so this, guys, for me is very focused on academia. Okay, in order to be inquisitive, in order to study, you need to be inquisitive. Something drew you to the BBA degree. You may be regretting it now and saying, "Oh gosh, it's so much work and it's so expensive," then it was worth it. A degree is never wasted, guys. It will always be worth it. It is never ever wasted. Let me tell you something now. Okay, I have 4 degrees. They are not wasted. Each of them was definitely worth it. So please finish your degree. Move along. Okay, if you want to study further, that's great. But a degree is never wasted. But these are things you wonder and question. The information interests you. You find it interesting. You wonder about things. You question it. You start to explore and investigate just on of your own volition. I mean, I know a family member, okay, of mine, who's absolutely crazy about Egypt. Everything Egyptian, Egyptology, the pyramids, the pharaohs, the Hatshepsut and Tutankhamun and the Nile and etc., and has gathered together a whole bunch of books on Egyptology. And I said to this particular family member, "Why don't you go and do a degree in the classics? Because you would learn so much, and you would have so much fun if you did this degree in the classics." Okay, because they're constantly exploring and investigating and wondering and questioning. And then what will happen is this person will come across a YouTube video, okay, and they'll say, "Oh, that's rubbish. That's not true about Egyptology." Or, "No, that's rubbish." They will challenge certain assumptions that have been made. So there is inquisitive creativity that leads you then to go and find information, to enhance information, and then to come up with new ideas within that inquisitiveness, that inquisition. Okay, then there is persistent creativity. This can sometimes be linked like creativity in the arts. You can see tolerating uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen. Guys, looking for a job is a creative endeavor. Okay, tolerating uncertainty. I don't know if I'm going to get a job. I need to keep looking. Sticking with difficulty, just sticking with like a math problem as well. I don't know what the answer is, I don't know what the solution is. Let me stick with it. Okay, and then daring to be different. Finding ways to approach the problem from a different angle, or to approach a solution from a different angle, come up with something that's completely unique. This is also importantly key for branding, guys. Branding is all about differentiation and distinction. So really important if you want to be different, if you want to focus on having a brand that is completely unique, then you would have to look at some sort of persistent creativity. Let's have a collaborative creativity. I'm going to scroll down here just ever so slightly. Okay, collaborative creativity. Guys, not all creativity is collaborative. If it is in a media environment, you're working for an ad agency, it probably needs to be collaborative. Okay, you would need to collaborate with other people, but not always. In some cases, I mean, when Newton came up with the laws that he came with, what goes up must come down. For every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. He understood gravity, etc., etc. Newton had, to my knowledge, isolated himself from other human beings for like a period of 2 or 3 years, and just every morning woke up, had something to eat, sat there thinking about these things, debating them, and then went to bed very late and woke up the next morning, whatever it is, and it was all done on his own. So similar to Pythagoras, similar to some of the Greek philosophers, but in some cases you have collaborative cooperation. And for those of you who are interested in Oppenheimer as the movie about the development of the nuclear weapon, the first nuclear weapons that they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that was all about collaboration. They brought together the best scientific minds from Europe and the United States and put them at Los Alamos. Okay, Alamogordo was where they did the actual test. Los Alamos was where they had the barracks and the bunks where because this was a highly secretive project. Remember, the Americans didn't want people to know they were developing this bomb. Okay, but you can see over there, cooperating appropriately, giving and receiving feedback, and sharing the product all happened in a collaborative environment. Same thing with the HIV virus at the beginning with AIDS. Okay, the Americans and the French at the same time, but in different places in Paris and in New York and Washington, were trying to determine, okay, what causes this disease. Remember, they didn't know initially when AIDS first came up, when HIV first came up, they didn't know what was causing people to die. They had to discover that what it was a blood-borne virus that was in the bloodstream that was mostly transmitted either by sexual intimacy or by people sharing intravenous needles if they were drug users, or from mother to child. That information that we know today to be evident was not in place. Same thing with coronavirus. When the coronavirus first came about, we didn't know what it was. We said, okay, it could be people would die. And unfortunately, this is the problem. Okay, people had to die so we could autopsy them and see what happened and then come up with ideas. I mean, everything we know about COVID-19, shortness of breath, the lips turn blue, you battle to breathe, anosmia, which is you lose your sense of taste and smell, that all came about because of observation. Okay, and this was all collaborative creativity, to be able to determine and to be able to then send the vaccine to all the world. That's collaborative. Okay, and then guys, the final one, which is also quite similar to persistent, disciplined creativity. So crafting and improving, let's say you're a writer, okay, the ability to, and also again with your assignments, the ability to be able to write and then read. Very important for those of you still in class, guys, read your assignment before you submit it. Okay, read it and reread, try and make the time. I know it's not always possible, sometimes you submit it at the last minute. Do what you can if you can, but read your assignment to see it and then craft and improve it, because a well-constructed, put together assignment that has good grammar and has got good sentences and good links and flows nicely is a wonderful thing for a good submission. It makes a huge amount of difference. If you're doing that and you're putting in your academic sources, your marks will dramatically improve. Okay, so just keep working. It's really important that you do that. Okay, so guys, crafting and improving, developing techniques. Okay, whatever it's going to be. Let's say, for example, you are a writer, you got a writing course that's developing your writing technique. Reflecting critically, you look at your own stuff, you put it away, so you go back to reflective. Okay, think about the slide over here. Okay, where you're reflecting first, okay, incubating, setting the problem aside. Okay, so now what you do is you're reflecting critically, and you say, okay, actually this work isn't great. I don't think it's what it needs to be. Or you say to yourself, I'm busy reading a book at the moment called by Rick Rubin, who is a producer, called The Creative Act. I'm actually listening to it because I've got it on Audible, so I'm listening to it. Wonderful book where he says, how do you know when a piece of art is finished? And he says, you'll know. You'll know when it's finished. You'll know when eventually you feel like you've got nothing more to add to it. You will know. But before that, you will look at it and say, no, this is not right. This needs to be tweaked. This needs to be done. And you need to give it time. So you will know. And obviously, he's worked with some of the biggest artists, in the music industry, and has been very successful. Jay-Z, Beyonce, etc., etc. Very successful, very, very, very successful. And he says, listen, I know nothing about music. I know nothing about production. I can just tell you when something's going to connect with the market, and I can tell you when a product is finished. And he's been very successful in that respect. And some artists who wanted to work with him, he said, listen, guys, I'm sorry, I can't work with you right now because I don't hear any way that I can help you. Based on what you've sent to me now, there's no way. So, but he specifically mentions, any type of art. And guys, if you're in the media industry, which is what you are creative and you are artistic and you are practicing art. So think about how you can reflect critically to improve. And all human beings do this. It's what makes us human. Okay, let's have a look then finally at 3 models of the creativity process. And then I wanted, there's still the Ikigai to go through. Okay, but I'll be quick. Okay, and then of course we're going to stop there. Okay, so let's have a look at these over here very quickly because I don't want to keep you up. We've only got about 15 minutes of class left. And I'll let you guys go so you can be on your way. Okay, so guys, models of the creativity process. Creativity is a complex process of motivation, imagination, and expertise. Some say it's inborn talent. Others refer to it as a learnable skill. No matter which way you choose, this infographic highlights various models for the process of creativity. These models have been suggested in the literature over the past 80 years and are still applied by several creativity researchers and practitioners all over the world. Okay, so there's the Wallace model of the creative process. You can see over here, and we've done this one. Okay, we're just going to go through it again. Preparation, incubation, illumination, verification. You can see they don't specifically do it in any order, because preparation, checklist of issue, observation, and study. Incubation, close your mind from thinking about ideas and spend time elsewhere. Illumination, that aha moment when the new idea finally emerges. And then verification, check if your idea is workable. Okay, so we look at Barron's psychic creation model. What they speak about over here is conception, gestation, parturition, and bringing up. Okay, so they look at it in terms of think of like a baby being born. Okay, so you can see over there, conception. Okay, so what they suggest over here is that they're obviously, turning it into a metaphor. Make love to your imagination and conceive an idea. So you soothe the imagination, you come up with an idea. Gestation, let your mind stay pregnant. Sorry about the spelling mistake over there, with this concept for some time. Okay, so let your mind stay with the idea. Parturition, push the idea out no matter how much it hurts. So you really got to push. Okay, and then bringing up. Develop the idea with love, attention, and special care. Okay, that's Barron's psychic creation model. Okay, then you can see Kohlberg and Bagnall's model of creative process. You can see they say accept, analyze, define, ideate, select, implement, and evaluate. There's their things. Okay. So accept, take an issue as a challenge and say, bring it. Analyze, so be a Sherlock and unlock the mysteries of facts and information. Define, outline the issues, the goals, the do's and don'ts. Ideate, generate several options and ways to go about doing this thing. So that's also a good idea. Come up with various do's and don'ts, pros and cons, plus and minus. Okay. Then select, choose the best among the rest. Implement, give a face to the idea. And then evaluate, review, and if it fails, plan again. Okay, so they sort of speak about some sort of cyclical vibe when it comes to creativity. Okay, so those are some things to think about. I really want to focus on this, you guys, the Ikigai. Okay, so again, like the Shinkansen we discussed today, this is a Japanese concept, and please forgive the crummy quality of the The visual. Okay, so guys, you can see it's a Venn diagram again that is the intersection of 4 elements. The top element in yellow is what you love. So what you love doing, what's important to you. Okay, the green element to the left is what you are good at. And that again is a matter of opinion, guys. Okay, the bottom blue circle is what you can be paid for. And then the red circle on the right-hand side is what the world needs. Okay, so what they're saying over here is where what you love and what you're good at intersects, that is called passion. And that is a very, very, very subjective view, guys, because what you think you're good at might not be what you're actually good at. And what you think you're good, what other people think you're good at might not be something that you absolutely love. It's very difficult to say. What I would say at the end of the day is this. You know in your heart of hearts what it is that you love and what it is that you want to do with your life, what it is what you want to do with your time. Okay, so you know, you've always known your soul will be your guide. Okay, and your soul will always tell you the truth. So please, guys, listen to your soul. I think some of the unhappiest people in life, people who commit suicide, people who are alcoholics, people who have major issues with addiction, substance abuse, and so on and so forth, okay, are people who are not listening to their souls, because your soul will tell you what it is. Now, you can argue to what extent is this purpose that you feel for life, is this given to you by somebody, a higher power, God, if you will, you know, your higher self, the universe, whatever you want to call it, okay? And to what extent do you choose it yourself? That's a very interesting debate. I know that if you look at Viktor Frankl, who was one of the godfathers of psychology as well, and wrote a book called The Meaning of Life. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish man in Austria in the Second World War. He was put into a concentration camp where they killed his wife, and he managed to survive. And he said, for example, when they were working in the concentration camp, a bird would fly into the concentration camp and the bird would tweet and flap its wings and fly. And seeing those kinds of things would give him joy and remind him how blessed he was to be alive. And when he came out of the concentration camp, focused on really offering people a solution to their issues with life by saying, find your purpose in life. And if you find a purpose, you find a reason for living, you will live an amazing life and you'll be able to overcome these obstacles. Okay, so what you're good at is very much if you think you're good at something and you actually aren't because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, then become good at it. Most people can improve by just, you know, taking some training. So for example, you might say, oh, I really want to be a brilliant writer. Maybe you're a lousy writer. Well, I can tell you, by writing more, you'll become a better writer. By doing a writing course, you'll become a better writer. By submitting your work for others to review, you'll become a better writer. Okay, then on the right-hand side, you can see what you love and what the world needs, according to this diagram, is your mission. So that's your mission, because what you love, what the world needs, that is your mission, your purpose for, or not your purpose, if you want to. Okay, you can see at the bottom, what you can be paid for and what the world needs is your vocation. So that's what you focus on in terms of earning a living. And then what you're good at and what you can be paid for is your profession. That's the intersection of those two over there. But in the middle is the ikigai, which is this Japanese concept. Okay, so what they're saying is you found your sweet spot at the intersection of these elements in the middle there, where you are doing something that you love, you're doing something that you're good at, you're doing something that the world needs, and you can be paid for it. If you are in the middle over there, then you find your ikigai, and that means you brought together passion, mission, vocation, and profession. Now, it sounds very idealistic. I don't know if that's always possible. Sometimes we know what our purpose and our mission is. We may not necessarily be able to earn money from it, okay, which is quite difficult. And maybe some of you guys will end up in jobs that you don't particularly like or that you don't particularly feel connected to. It's a way to earn money. But then if you still and guys, in some cases over here, okay, let's have a look at it. Some people, you might say, okay, what do you love? What are you good at? What the world needs, what you can be paid for. Okay, let's say your greatest desire on earth is to be a mother. Okay, for those of you in the class who are women. Okay, does it necessarily mean, okay, that just because you're a mother, is it something that you love? Absolutely. Are you good at it? Well, sometimes maybe not. You want to be a good mother, but you're not always the perfect mother. Okay, what the world needs, the world definitely needs mothers, and they need good mothers. Can you be paid for it? Not necessarily. As a matter of fact, in most cases, you won't be paid for it. It's going to end up costing you money. Okay, so if your purpose in life is to be a mother, and you look at the ikigai and say, yeah, but I can't ever be paid for it, that means I can't be my purpose in life. Rubbish. That's not for anybody to determine but you. Only you can determine what it is that you want to do with your life. It's not for anybody else to determine. It's entirely up to you. Now, some people might say, well, Rob, what I want to be is a couch potato. Okay, then be a couch potato. If that's what you really want to do with your life, that's fine. But I think there's something more that's calling you there. I just think that you are scared of it. As I say, the two greatest, most powerful forces on earth are fear of failure and fear of success. Okay, so guys, contextualizing this for the last 5 minutes before we finish this class today. Okay, what I want you guys to think about and look at is, how is your brand using, now when I say your brand, I mean your specific brand for your assignment. How is your brand using creativity to put together its integrated media management strategy? Okay, so when you do your assignment, you need to show me how your brand is being creative, how it successfully integrated all the various elements of the media management strategy. Okay, how is it specifically applied to the 5 elements of the marketing communications mix? Okay, so how have they think about it, guys. Not everybody knows to connect all the elements, but if all the elements connect, you have a much more powerful marketing message because it's creative and it's clear and it's compelling, and that's when people pay attention to it. Okay, and then what is your brand's UBP? Please note, for those of you who want to make a note, UBP is unique brand proposition. So what is it? We used to call this the USP in the old days, unique sales proposition. What is your brand's unique brand proposition? What makes your brand unique? And how can you creatively showcase that uniqueness to people using an integrated media management strategy, specifically around the elements, the 5 elements of the marketing communications mix? Okay. And then how have they used this to position the brand and create a perceptual space in the mind? So guys, that's, remember I said to you at the beginning as well, all of what we have to do, and this is also just some insight for you guys, okay, for your S1. Your S1, your summative assessment is very, very similar to the F3. Okay, the difference is going to be, you're going to be focusing a bit more on branding and on a brand flow model that I've discussed with you guys previously. Very, very important. So what does it boil down to? How do you create space in your mind for something that's important to you? And think about it. People often say to you, oh, don't pay any attention to that, pay no mind to that, forget about that, put that out of your mind, etc. Sometimes we focus on negative stuff, and that's what makes us unhappy. But think about it. Think about your mom. Think about your dad. Think about brothers and sisters. Think about your spouse. Think about the most important things. You are constantly thinking about that. You allow them to have space in your mind. And in some cases, I'm not saying that a brand will always necessarily have lots of space in your mind, but if it is a brand that serves your purpose, because as I said to you before, people are not loyal to brands, people are loyal to their highest values. So if you find a product or service or idea that supports your highest values, you will support that brand. Let's say, for example, you say, I want to be a writer, and I love writing, and writing is very important to me. And because I want to be a good writer, it's really important that I'm able to use a word processing document. Microsoft Word is the best. I love Microsoft Word, therefore I will continue. So people might perceive you being loyal to Microsoft Word, but in actual fact, what you're doing is using it as a vehicle to help you improve your writing. Okay, so think about how you can create perceptual space in the mind of the brand. But I want to take it beyond this, and this is going to be my last thing that I wanted to say to you, okay? And we're going to be finishing the class now. What I wanted to say to you is this. It's all fine and well to apply the stuff to your studies, to your academics. Okay, so think about how you can help the company or product or service that you're working on become better. But what I really want you to focus on as well is, are you living according to your highest values? Are you living a life that you're proud of? Are you following your dreams? Okay, now sometimes you have to follow your dreams on the side while you're earning a living. And there's nothing wrong with that. But please, guys, don't ever get to the end of your life and say, I didn't live my dream. I wanted to do that and I never did it. I wanted to go climb, Mount Everest and I never went and did it. I wanted to go to Machu Picchu, I never went and did it. I wanted to go to a kibbutz in Israel, I never did it. I wanted to get married, I wanted to have children. Don't ever let that be. And sometimes, life doesn't allow you to achieve your dreams, but you can at least try. Okay, so cool, guys. That concludes today then. Thank you for your time. And it was very long. These classes are extremely long. Are there any questions? Ntabi Singh, Michelle, Techofatso, thanks for staying to the end. Do you guys have any questions or anything that you want to add?
No, I don't have any questions.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, Ntabi Singh. I appreciate it. Michelle, you had your mic unmuted.
I just said no, I don't have any questions for now.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Michelle, it's so good to see you in class today. I'm very impressed. Wonderful to have you in class. I'm very happy to have you here. Ntabi Singh, thanks for joining us. How are you finding these day classes instead of the evening classes or the separate classes? Are you
Do you know what, Rob? Karika
Yes.
actually contacted me recently and found out that I actually hadn't done media and globalization, which is sociology in media now. So there's a clash with the part-time classes. So I decided to just go on to the daytime class for IMM. And then after this, it will be sociology of media at 6.
Oh, I see. So you got the evening class. Oh, hell, that's hectic, hey?
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Ntabi Singh, if you're finding these classes, I'm happy to assist you on a different morning if you can't do, these classes are quite long if you want to do I think because you're working, hey? I mean, I know you do work for London, with a
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, please let me know. Otherwise, we can stay in touch.
Okay.
Have you decided yet what you want to do in terms of your brand? I can't remember.
No, not yet.
You
I
haven't decided.
I haven't decided, but I will let you know by the end of the week.
That's cool. No, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. No problem. Thanks. It's lovely having you here though today. It's nice to have the perspective of a student who's working. So
Thanks, Rob.
thank you for being here. It's cool. Awesome. Techofatso, anything from you? Anything you want to add? Maybe you're not. Okay, you are there. Okay.
No, it's all good.
Cool. Lovely to have you in class today. I'm so glad you stayed. Thanks for staying. It's lovely to have you in class today. Guys, I can honestly tell you, class attendance makes a huge difference. I know these lectures are long and they're boring, but there's stuff that's covered in here that you don't get just from the assignment brief or what it is. And a lot of people don't watch the videos, so just know that, your diligence and your discipline will be rewarded. I'm expecting you guys to put together phenomenal presentations. So I look forward to that. Cool. So if there's nothing else then, ladies, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to wish you well. Thank you for staying. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm also going to end the recording so that it can start doing its thing. Stop. Yes. Okay. And then I'm